It's not late.
Is it 5:30 right now?
Yeah, like this minute.
Just
It's not late.
We're fine.
So good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the November 19th meeting of the Logan Municipal Council. Thank you to everybody who is here today. So excited because for our opening ceremony tonight, we do have some members of Logan High School who are here. For those of you who may or may not be aware, for a while we did have a Logan City Youth Council. It was disbanded, 4 or 5 years ago, Holly? And it's been reconstituted thanks to Councilmember Lopez and Ryan Nelson and Mayor Daines. So we have those students. We just were meeting with them beforehand, which is why I'm a little discombobulated. But if you guys would like to come up and whatever it is you would like to do to introduce yourselves and open our meeting and lead us in the pledge.
Hi, we are part of the Logan City Youth Council. We're here to sit and listen and watch and learn a lot more about how our city works and functions. And we'd like to lead you in the Pledge of Allegiance, so please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks again for your interest in learning more about city government. I'm sure we'll see one of you as President of the United States one day, which would be awesome. Okay, at this time, I will accept a motion for acceptance of our minutes and approval of tonight's agenda.
I'll move to accept the minutes and approve the agenda.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the minutes and approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are accepted and agenda approved. Just as a reminder, the Logan City Council does meet every first and third Tuesday of the month at 5:30. Our next meeting will be December 3rd. We will not be holding a meeting on December 17th. That meeting has been canceled, so we'll see you all here just once in December. At this point in our agenda is always time for questions and comments for the mayor and the council. Anybody who would like to comment on an item that is not otherwise on the agenda is welcome to come up and address the city council at this point in time. Just need to step to the microphone, give your name, where you live, limit your comments to 3 minutes. I would like to see, though, I know that there's been many people who have been interested in the Canyon Road issue with trees. Are there multiple people here who are planning to speak to that tonight? Just one? Okay. Because typically when if we have a big crowd, we usually limit it to one person to make a comment. So anyway, yeah, again, non-agenda items. If you're interested in coming up, if anything is raised, we will make sure that staff or council member gets back in touch with you after the council meeting. So the microphone.
Remind them to put their email address on the sign-in
yes.
sheet so we can get back to you.
Thanks, Mayor Daines. All right, the floor is open.
I want to talk about feeling grateful at this time. We got, at the senior center on Tuesday mornings, we get puzzles for mindfulness. It helps us to exercise our minds. And this is about feeling grateful. But I wanted to change some of this to things that I find in my life are much more important. Well, it said birthdays, but at this point, birthdays are just They just come and go. But books are very important. Challenges, the earth, family, health, hearing, heart, home, hugs and kisses, jokes, laughter, eating and crying together, music, reading, schools, sunshine, teachers. I also want to be thankful for welcome from neighbors, from community, from friends, from municipal government, and being heard and teaching here and caring. And I'm especially grateful for children and grandchildren. I want to say this afterward because I want you to know how grateful I've been for the last few years. I've come to a decision that I've got some service to do in the community, and I may not be here as consistently as I've been because the personal service to other people is higher on my priority list. And I just thought I'd let you know that I am grateful for each and every one of you and the staff for listening. I will be coming back occasionally when I think it's something that is very important to me and my life. But I just wanted to say thank you to each of you for being willing to put up with me. I hope I've made a difference in helping you think about things for families and children and what is needed to help keep our communities family-based, not development-based, because families are what make up our city. And so happy Thanksgiving to each one.
Thank you. Thank you, Gail. Happy Thanksgiving to you, too.
Hello, I'm Melena Hales. I've lived in Logan for the past couple years. And I was urged by a couple different people to bring a concern to your council. This is in regards to the Municipal Code 1052-285, parking in immobilization, the booting. Just because I'm at the college, I'm not currently an undergrad, I'm a graduate student, but I have had multiple experiences with the booting company, the only private booting company that Logan has. And it's a huge issue, particularly for college students, because they definitely prey on any kind of apartment complex that is mostly populated by the college students. And I just feel that any complaint has not been taken seriously. They are always in violation. This particular company is the Parking Enforcement LLC, and I think it has two other companies under different names under the same person. But they are always in violation of those particular municipal codes that I just mentioned, particularly charging more than $75 by a convenience fee, which is both with a $3 convenience fee, which is always over $75, which is in violation of one rule, and also putting a fee on a valid debit or credit card is also, not valid. And also just holding cars hostage, refusing to take them off, and no refund for the $78, even if they are in the wrong. Like, they will not give you any kind of refund, even if they weren't supposed to be there. My particular experience was a friend of mine got booted a minute after 12 o'clock, which, unfortunately is technically, they're 1 minute over, but they are not contracted with my private apartment complex, and so she had to pay $78 to get it off when they weren't even supposed to be there. And apparently this is a very common theme. I even have a friend who is the landlady over at Twin Creek, and they booted over 70 people in one night all of which were residents of that area and paid for parking. And she told them that she no longer wanted their services, and they still patrol that parking lot regardless. I think the words that they used were, "I'm not going to do that," when she said to not show up, essentially. So I just thought I'd bring that up because I'm not sure it's something that you guys were aware of. And yeah, if there's anything else you want me to say about that.
Yeah, Lainey, just make sure you've given us your email.
Yes,
and
my email
that
is
form.
in there, yes.
Okay.
And I have been working with Aaron Smith over at the, you know him, yeah. He was the one who told me to come here, so.
Okay.
Just on the business license end, anyway.
Right. Thanks, Lainey.
Melena.
Melena, okay. Anybody else?
Hello, Council, Mayor. I'm Brandon Elwood. I live at 623 Canyon Road. I've spoken the last couple meetings and have talked to you about how our efforts are just at the beginning as far as raising awareness about some of the projects, including the Canyon Road Waterline Project and other projects, Low Logan River. But specifically, the Canyon Road Waterline Project has hit home for myself and for many neighbors and many others, and I know the Little Logan River has as well. The last two times I spoke, I wrote down my thoughts beforehand, and today it's been a long day. Talked with quite a few concerned citizens. When we began to, when we were told that, well, let me just say this. Being here in this room with the flag, saying the Pledge of Allegiance, it feels a lot like a classroom, It feels like being a kid again. And you guys are here in these spots, elevated, and it gives a feeling to the rest of us that, you have some, you are in positions of leadership, I'll give you that. But if you look at the city website and you look at the org chart there, on top of that org chart isn't the mayor, it isn't the city council, it's the citizens of Logan. Anybody can look at the city website and see that for themselves. And I think that's important to remember. The efforts that we've made to raise awareness are simply that. We have not felt that we have been made aware of the various engineering projects that will be, in the tens of millions of dollars coming out of our pockets to change the character of the city, to remove trees, to pipe rivers. These efforts are of great concern, and because you as city council, mayor, city staff, because we have not been made aware, we have taken it upon ourselves to make the people aware, and we will continue to do that. We're just at the tip of the iceberg. I want you to consider what your legacy will be, each of you, what you'll do with your name, something that I've been told since I was young. And as you represent us as the citizens of Logan, please take that seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. All right, seeing nobody else, I will bring this back to our agenda and we will move on to the mayor and staff reports. Mayor Daines?
Thank you very much. Item 6A, the first one is our fiscal year 2024 financial statement presentation by Rich Anderson, our finance director, and Stephen Rowley, our auditor. This is a very important part of what we do, is present our budget to the public and make sure everyone's aware of how we spend our money. So please go forward.
I will come over here because in a moment I'm going to fire up the computer and let Steve talk about the financial statements. But as I've thought about our financial statements and what I think you should know as council and what the public should know, is that the city of Logan is in a very good, very responsible position. We have good reserves in most of our funds. It does not mean we have all of the funds that we need, but it does mean in most, if not all of our funds, we have the emergency reserves necessary that we think are responsible. And we're able to act and react to changes in the environment and changes in our plans and what we intend to do with those funds. If you were to look at our funds, you would see that we've accumulated a lot of resources. What is not in the financial statements is what is coming in the future. We've got projects in the electric fund that are on that have been appropriated, some of those funds, including electric turbines. In our Public Works Department, we have a future Public Works building that we've discussed. Water Fund, we have discussed the water tank project. Environmental Health Fund, we have the compost facility that's coming up, as well as in our Sewer Treatment Fund, the fourth bioreactor for our sewer treatment plant. These are big projects. In total, we're talking about $170 million that'll be spent over the next, let's say, 2 to 4 years as these projects start. That's a tremendous amount of resources. However, we've accumulated much of those. We will have to bond for some, potentially, to complete those. But that's processes that will happen in the future. Just wanted to make sure you know that we're acting responsibly. Our financial statements show that we're in a strong position. However, we've got a lot of projects in the future that we're going to be tackling. The second thing that I want to highlight is typically in financial statements, we don't do negative disclosures. What that means is we don't say in our financial statements, we didn't do anything wrong. Instead, our financial statements speak for themselves. However, there is one negative disclosure, and that is in relation to budgets. And I don't know, it's in the notes somewhere. It's one of the first 2 notes where we talk about whether we were in compliance with our budgets. And then I'm happy to report that none of our departments exceeded their budget. We take budgets very seriously. Every council meeting, we have adjustments to those budgets when it's necessary, when we receive grants. And when there are circumstances outside of our control, we will come to council and request that we appropriate funds. But I'm happy to report no departments exceeded their budgets. That's nothing unusual for our city. In fact, I don't think we've exceeded budgets over the last 10, 15 years. It does happen periodically because of circumstances outside our control that happen very near to year end. But very, very rarely, we take it very seriously to stay within our budgets and accomplish those projects and purposes that council has appropriated funds toward so that we can serve the citizens of Logan. With that, I'll turn over some time to Stephen Rowley with KNC Certified Public Accountants, who has audited our financial statements, and he can present those opinions.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you. Mayor and Council, my name is Steve Rowley. Shouldn't be a new face to most of you. You look new to me. You look new as well.
First year I see.
Yep.
He was in the audit committee meeting, but you were online.
I was on the
so
phone,
you
that's
wouldn't-
why. That's why. All right. I apologize.
No, you're fine.
I didn't recognize you by your voice.
No, you're totally fine.
I was the engagement partner over the city's financial statement audit for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2024. As I work for the council, I'm back to report how the audit went. Our responsibility as auditors is to come in as an independent, objective, third-party observer, for lack of a better term, to come and see if the financial statements prepared and presented by the city are materially correct. That means we perform tests and procedures to come to a conclusion whether that's the case. So if we want to jump into the opinion, the first 2 paragraphs are kind of the highlight of the audit opinion, and it states that in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, the business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of the City of Logan, Utah as of June 30th, 2024, and the respective changes in financial position and where applicable cash flows thereof for the year ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. For anybody who is an English nerd, that is a single run-on sentence.
Yes, it is.
But as it states there, that these financial statements are materially correct. So that means through our procedures and our testing, we determined that these financial statements are materially correct. They can be relied upon, and they meet the standards and requirements for the state, for bond issuing entities, all of those requirements. Now that's our opinion. Great. What does that even mean? The rest of this report, a couple pages, talks about what is the basis for those opinions. So this is where it dives into more of the responsibilities that we have as auditors, as well as responsibilities of the city and management to prepare and maintain the records in such a way that they can be audited. As you looked at towards the bottom of that first page, the indented bulleted list talks about several things that are kind of the key points of the responsibility of the auditors. And the first one is to exercise professional judgment and maintain professional skepticism throughout the audit.
Oh, I like that word. Professional skepticism.
Have a healthy sense of maybe paranoia, maybe that's the term. But basically, this is trust but verify. We can receive the information that the audit or the city has provided. We're not going to take that at face value. We're going to compare that to outside or other corroborating evidence to ensure that that is accurate, that you're not trying to pull the wool over our eyes, right? The rest of these are also important. We identify and assess risks of misstatement. So we look at the financial statements, we look at the processes and procedures that the city has in place, and determine if there's an area, where would be the areas of highest risk? Where could something go wrong? That's the question we ask ourselves as we go into the audit. And that's a similar question you as council members and mayor should ask yourself from time to time. Looking at the city operations, what could go wrong and how do we fix that? So we look at it and say, what could go wrong and what do we need to do to ensure that there's not an error or a material misstatement in those areas? So the entire audit is based on this assessment of risk and observing and understanding the entity to determine where those risks may be. Among our responsibilities is also to plan and perform the audit in accordance with government auditing standards. That is a step above generally accepted auditing standards, where we now consider a little more in-depth the internal controls of the city. We also look at the financial reporting processes and procedures, and we look at compliance with laws, rules, and regulations, that if there was non-compliance with those, it could have a material effect or negative impact on the financials. So we'll talk about that government auditing standards momentarily. There's a whole separate report that we can look at for that. As we skip to the next page, you can see the top there, required supplementary information. Required supplementary information is something that Government Accounting Standards Board requires, that is in addition to what is normally required in a normal financial statement. So if you pull up a for-profit financial statement for, say, someone on the S&P 500, you're not going to see the required supplementary information. But for governments, they said this is important enough that we want the public to see this information and to put this information in such a way that they can better understand the information behind the numbers. Very few people in their lives dedicate all their time to understanding the numbers. GASB understands that, so that's why they throw in these things that are required supplementary information. So that includes several things. The most important, I think, in my opinion, is the management's discussion and analysis section. So immediately following this audit report is the management's discussion and analysis, and what that does is it provides the comparative information for the current fiscal, or the recently finished fiscal year, the previous fiscal year, and provides some trend analysis, some highlights and reasonings for what changed in operations year over year. So that's certainly a good place for concerned residents or even members of the public to read through that, to get an understanding of what happened in the city during the year and compares that to what happened in the previous year. Additionally, there's pension schedules in the back that talk about, that have 10 years of trend data related to the funding of the Utah Retirement System's pension, up and down, what the city's proportionate share of all that is. There's a lot of information on that. In essence, what this paragraph is talking about is, even though that information reconciles back to what was directly audited, that information itself is not part of the audit, and so we don't give an opinion on the management's discussion and analysis or pension schedules. But those do all reconcile back to what has been audited. Additionally, the next paragraph talks about supplementary information, and this is things required by the Uniform Guidance or Single Audit Act. So whenever an entity receives a significant amount of federal funds, there's additional testing that's required over those, and so there are some schedules in the back that also talk about, there's a schedule of the financial awards that explains what federal funds were received by the city, how much of that was spent, and there's some additional information on that as well. And then the next section talks about other information, so there are things included that are part of the ACFR submission process, the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, where there's, again, 10 years of statistical information in the back on a lot of information that is quite helpful for those that are looking at the city of Logan and trying to get a better understanding of what's going on here. Okay, the last paragraph there talks about the Government Auditing Standards Report and points us there. So we're going to jump to the end of this report and look at that. This report is 100 and some odd, 115, 118 pages long. There is a lot of information in here.
So what page should we just jump to?
It's not all numbers. So the one good thing I do want to point out, a lot of what we just scrolled past was footnote disclosures. So if you're looking at the numbers in the tables and the schedules and you have a question on something, there's likely some footnote in there that discusses that, or it helps to explain what that's doing in there, what that means, like what's a deferred inflow of resources, those types of things. So
we're at page 114, according to my PDF.
yeah, so those are still scrolling. Okay, so this is the report on government auditing standards. So we're going to look at 3 reports that are all going to be kind of similar in that they're broken out into 2 parts. There's a section that talks about internal controls related to the area. So in this case, government auditing standards. We're going to look at controls over financial reporting. The next one is the Uniform Guidance Report, which is going to talk about internal controls related to the federal awards. And the third report is the State Compliance Report. We're going to look at internal controls related to the state compliance reporting requirements. And then each one of those also has a section about compliance. So it's going to sound a little bit like a broken record, but just throw that out there. I'm not reading the same report over and over again. So related to the internal controls over financial reporting, as I mentioned earlier, we look at the internal controls of the city. And by doing that, we look at those to determine the extent of the testing necessary. As I mentioned, we look at what are the controls and where could something go wrong, where are the potential risks. And then we beef up our audit procedures in those areas and do other procedures for other areas. Part of our responsibilities is to report back if there were any deficiencies in those internal controls so that then you can take action to improve those. As it states there, yep, perfect. During our audit, we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control that we considered to be material weaknesses. Certainly, we can't look at every single transaction. We would be here every day, all year, and it would be extremely cost prohibitive, and that's not even required. So this is as high of an opinion you can receive related to the internal controls. We do feel like the city has strong internal controls, and in reading through the minutes and in discussion with Rich, Ruben, and the rest of the finance, as well as others in the city, there's always a concern about how can we improve, how do we make this better, how do we protect the city's, and in essence, the public's assets, which is the tax funds that they've paid in. The second part of this report talks about compliance, and the last sentence of that paragraph says, the results of our test disclosed no instances of non-compliance or other matters that are required to be reported under government auditing standards. So again, that's the highest opinion you can receive related to government auditing standards. So we'll go to the next report, which is the Uniform Guidance Report. Again, this is related to the federal monies that are received. Whenever the federal government gives out money, there's always strings attached, and those strings have a lot of compliance requirements. You must spend it this way, you can only use it doing this, A, B, C, whatever it is. So this year, well, I guess it starts out with the opinion. On that short paragraph there, it states that in our opinion, the city complied in all material respects with the types of compliance requirements referred to above that could have a direct and material effect on each of its major federal programs for the year ended June 30th, 2024. So that is a clean opinion on the city's compliance with these federal awards. If we want to take a quick look at the schedule of expenditure of federal awards, which I guess is a few pages back. PDF, or I don't know what PDF page it is, but it's page 110. So this schedule is the list of all the federal awards that were received and expended during the year. It breaks it out by the different programs, and there's a lot of information here, but really we're looking at the big program here. The one towards the bottom is the Child Care and Development Block Grant, the one that was considered a major program this year. So that's, because it doesn't say that on there, that's the after-school program. I think this was the first time it's met the qualification to be tested as a major program. And honestly, the records were very well prepared. I think it's a fascinating program. I thought it was really neat to learn more about the program and how the city implements that. But that was the major program selected for testing. So as part of our looking at these federal awards, we look at the internal controls related to those federal programs. So is the city aware of what strings are attached and what do they have in place to ensure that they're following all those requirements? So we looked at those controls. We did not identify any weaknesses or deficiencies in those internal controls either. We had no errors or question costs related to the federal programs, which is a wonderful thing. Because there really is a lot of things that have to be done to ensure compliance. And it's not necessarily just, was it recorded properly in the accounting system? So very well done on the part of the city. As I mentioned, the internal control related to, so on the next page, talks about the internal control over compliance. And as I mentioned, we did not identify any deficiencies or weaknesses. So we do feel like the city has strong controls over the federal award programs. In order to not have any findings, I think every year that we've gone through single audit testing, there's not been any findings related to those federal awards. So that's a very good track record. Yes?
Can you give a practical example of what would be a finding, something that was wrong?
Okay, yeah. So for example, if funds were spent on something that wasn't related to the after-school program, say they paid out a bonus to some other sports coach or something like that, that wasn't specifically related to the after-school program, that would be a violation, and that would be what we would call a question cost. It's federal funds that were not spent appropriately, and it could require the city to repay that back to the federal government, or to use other funds to fill in that gap that doesn't really qualify. It could also be if there was not the proper reports submitted to show their compliance. Typically quarterly or annually, there are reports required to basically say this is how we spent the money. In fact, the reports for the after-school program talk about the attendance record. It has information about how many students attend, general information about what types of backgrounds we're serving, whether they're underserved populations. There's numbers on that so that they can track to say how do we get more involvement. So it's more than just accounting for numbers and spending the money. It's how do we make this a beneficial program for the community that is being funded. And so if there was deficiencies in those reports or they weren't reporting it, that would also be a finding that would show up.
Thank you.
Wonderful question. Thank you. And the next report is going to be the State Compliance Audit Guide report. So each year, the State Auditor's Office puts out what they call their State Compliance Audit Guide. And it requires government entities that undergo an audit to have some additional testing performed. They figure while we're there, we're going to have the auditors test some of this other stuff. And a lot of what we look at is not necessarily numbers related. And so in order to go through a state compliance audit without findings means there was a lot of effort outside of even the finance and accounting department to ensure that everything met the requirements. So as you can see here, the indented section are the areas that were required to be tested this year. So budgetary compliance, fund balance, etc. For each of those areas, we look at, we perform tests of compliance to determine whether the city complied with the requirements that the state auditor is asking us to look at. And we also look at the internal controls related to those compliance areas. So, for example, the fund balance area, we're going to look at what controls or what processes are in place at the city to ensure that the fund balance is being monitored, and if it was going to go into a deficit position, that the city has some method to follow state code to bring that back up or to help alleviate that. So that's an example of a control over one of these state compliance areas. So as a result of our testing, our opinion on compliance is there, and it states that the city complied in all material respects with the state compliance requirements referred to above for the year ended June 30th, 2024. And then the basis for opinions is very similar to the other reports where it talks about what our responsibilities are as auditors as well as management's responsibilities. Then the second part, so flip over to the next page, is going to talk about internal controls related to those state compliance areas. And as the other reports have stated, let's see. It's in there somewhere. Oh, there it is. Okay, we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control over compliance that we consider to be material weaknesses or significant deficiencies as defined above. So again, this is a clean report on the city's compliance. In all these reports, the audit opinion, the government auditing standards report, the single or federal audit, as well as the state compliance. So very well done, and this does take a team of individuals to make sure that this is met. Some of the things we look at deal with the council meeting minutes being published properly. That has nothing to do with Rich or the finance team. So other people all work together to make sure that these are accomplished properly. At this conclusion, we do want to state that we do appreciate the hard work and efforts of city staff, management, and the council and the mayor for their efforts and their support in going through and encouraging a strong finance department that is concerned about the well-being of the city's funds and tracking those appropriately. City staff were very helpful in providing all the information we requested in a timely manner. Our experience has been that even though there is a lot to audit, they do a wonderful job of getting everything reconciled and ready to go for year end. It makes it as pleasant of an experience as an audit can be, no matter how painful it can be sometimes. I'm sure everybody in the finance department is glad when we leave. But we do appreciate being associated with the City of Logan, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. If there are questions in the future as well, feel free to reach out. Both Rich and Ruben have my cell number, so you can always get a hold of me if there's something that you have questions on.
So I would like to make a comment based on the audit committee, because we reviewed all of this information in the audit committee meeting. And one of the things that happens every year is Rich gets to leave. Rich and his team get to leave, and the audit committee gets to
Kick them out.
We are able to ask any questions, and we are able to hear any concerns that might not be shared with you. And in the time that I've been on the audit committee, I'm happy to say that I've never had any negative comments. And I, for one, truly appreciate your work and appreciate the work of Rich and his team in keeping our city whole and financially stable, looking to the future and looking at today. And I think we're very lucky. So,
Any other questions for Stephen or Rich?
Very thorough.
Yeah, thank you for everything.
I'm just curious, I might have asked this question in years past, but how many hours of labor does it take to complete this?
That's a good question.
A lot.
how many hours are you on site?
On site? So we're generally here for a week each year. There's typically 2 or 3 of us.
But that's not a 40-hour week.
And they stay till 11 at night. Start it before.
Yeah,
So I'm
usually
just starting there for your answer.
this is not normal. Now, because we travel from the Salt Lake Valley, I stay here overnight, and I figure I might as well do something besides go back to the hotel and watch cheesy movies.
Yeah.
So I just stay here and work. So I'm typically here from about 7:30 a.m. till 11:30, midnight. I think the first night was 12:30. Just getting through as much as we can so we don't have to, so it doesn't spill over into a second week and disrupt more of your operations. So whatever that adds up to, 16, 17 hours a day for 5 days.
And multiple people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You are really making accounting a career that I regretted not going into.
I don't know.
We really appreciate that.
There was also a lot of time afterwards going back and reviewing things, requesting additional documentation, asking more questions. So I'd have to go back and look at the hours, but it's easily,
Significant.
I don't know, probably 300 hours or so.
300 or 400 hours.
Thank you.
Great.
Anything else?
Okay, thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to item 6B. Annually, we need to do, as required by law, the Open and Public Meeting Act training, and Craig Carlston, our city attorney, will do that for us today.
Yeah, state code requires us to do this once a year. You're all familiar with this. You're pretty well versed also in the Open Public Meetings Act. There are a couple of things that I wanted to highlight, though. You were given an outline that you've seen before. There was a change in the definition of meeting that didn't make it to your outline. So I'll give you that change and provide you with a new outline, but I'll read it here. So House Bill 36 passed this year, changed the definition of meeting. Meeting now means a gathering of a public body with a quorum present and that is convened by an individual with authority to convene a public body. The meeting is convened by following the process provided by law. And for the express purpose of acting a public body to receive public comment, deliberate about a relevant matter, or take action upon a relevant matter. And the primary change from former code to the current code is the meeting is to be convened following the process provided by law, which means notice and going through those notice and procedures. It's to help avoid any argument that anytime the council gets together in a forum, with a youth council or a seminar or whatever, that should be a noticed meeting. So I think it helps clarifies that, which is a useful change for the council. One other item we can highlight, closed meetings. Closed meeting may be held if a quorum is present. The meeting has to start out as an open meeting. 2/3 of the members present need to vote to approve the closed meeting. And then also the reasons for the closed meeting need to be entered in the minutes. And then there's just a few reasons why you can go into a closed meeting. If you have other questions, feel free to contact the legal department. We're happy to work with you.
Any questions now for Craig?
All right. Then item 6C, the last item, I just wanted to bring it to the council and the public's attention that our very own Amy Anderson, our council chair, recently received a nice award from the Utah Homeless Services Board. She represents Logan City on that. She received the Outstanding Community Leader from this board, and we recognize her hard work. Again, as council members, they have many different assignments, and she has spent a lot of time on this issue, which is one that's really affecting our community these days, and we appreciate her dedication and involvement. So, congratulations. And that completes my report.
Okay, and I'm going to thank Dr. Gail Yost, because back in the day, she's the one who first said to me, you need to start attending the local homeless council meetings. This is an important issue for our community. So thank you, Dr. Yost. I appreciate your interest in that.
I always like to give input.
We'll now move on to council business. Jeannie, we have a planning commission update tonight.
Yes, Planning Commission had 4 items on their agenda. The first one was an Airbnb, which passed. The other one, the next one was a request to annex some property, 59 plus acres, in what will be the industrial zone. That will come to us, so we'll discuss it then. A project called Latitude 41, which is a mixed-use project that is, I'm going to say, close to the Y intersection. It's kind of south of Costa Vida in that
On the east side.
empty area. And that one was continued to the December meeting. So there was no decision. And Willow Lakes presented their PED overlay workshop to the Planning Commission. And that will then come to us for the same sort of discussion. So that's all that happened.
Thanks. Do you want to just move into your committee reports?
Sure. In the past month, I've of course gone to Planning Commission. I also went to to the governor, or the mayor's equivalent of the CMPO, the COG meeting, where they talked about priorities for funding. I went to the Water Advisory Board meeting where we had a discussion about aspects in the sewage treatment program. And I went to, oh, I'm reading the wrong one. Whoa, okay. I went to an audit committee meeting, and I'm going to forget some now because I've got the wrong list. And, oh shoot, we had a meeting about the 400 North, 600 West intersection to clear up some discussions that we've had over time about the light and the improvements on the road. Last evening, I went to the PL 566 public meeting, both as a council member and as a member of the Cache Water District Board. That was not a required meeting, but just an informational meeting, and was very well attended. And beyond that, I can't remember now. So
if something comes up, you can report on it in December.
All good.
Mark, do you have anything to share with us?
Solid waste didn't meet, economic development didn't meet. I was out of town when the golf board met, but I did get minutes on that. I've spent a lot of time, kind of like Jeannie, on the Cache watershed, going to a lot of meetings, and I've been spending a lot of time visiting people in their homes on Canyon Road, and I think it's been very, very productive. Probably just in the last week, I've met with 6 different property owners down there, and been able to just sit down and visit with them in their homes, and it's been a really great experience. We've been able to talk about their views and their perspective on things, and just kind of discuss as neighbors what's happening there, and it's been a great opportunity. So I've really enjoyed doing that, and I plan on doing some more. So yeah, thank you.
All right, we will now turn to our action items this evening. We do have, let me just double check, 4 public hearings. First on our agenda is ordinance 23-31, and this is again being postponed, correct? Or
Yeah, my name is Issa Hamoud.
and you're asking for a continuance?
You're asking for another continuance?
The Division of Water Quality of the state needs to approve this. There's a public comment period, 40-day public comment period. We received notice last week that they are sending notice out for that public comment period.
Oh, my stars.
So that has not begun yet. So Issa and I spoke, and thinks probably 3 months should be sufficient.
I move we continue item 23-31 to the December, January, February
4th?
second meeting in
18th.
February, the 18th of February.
Okay.
Does that work? Okay.
I'll second that.
So we're moving this to February 18th. just
Continuing to
clarify.
February 18th. Okay. So we had a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor of continuing ordinance 23-31 to February 18th, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's continued. This is what, the 3rd time, I think, now that we've had to continue
I think
this
it's the
because of
3rd or
state?
4th.
No.
Yeah, better get on.
And it's a good thing we have Teresa, because none of us would remember that was coming up.
Exactly.
It's her job.
All right. Our next public hearing is consideration of a proposed sale of real property. This is not something that the council is going to be voting on. Kirk, if you want to walk us through that, I would appreciate it.
Okay, so as Chair Anderson indicated, the city intends to sell the property that it owns that's located at 48 North, 100 West. There you can see an aerial shot. That orange arrow on the left is pointing to the property, so 100 West is on the left. The plaza is on the far right, so this is the center block in the historic downtown. So 48 North Main, currently that building is occupied by a tenant, Jump the Moon Art Gallery, Art Studio and Gallery. And this is a single structure building. You can see in red what the city owns and intends to sell. By single structure, what I mean is the back 1/3 of that building, which is to to the right of the red square is a separate real estate parcel and owned independently. Mark and Ron Anderson, owners of Anderson Seed and Garden, own that. They also sublease a portion of the space that is leased out to Jump the Moon. So our portion of the building that we own is about 5,800 square feet. There's about 5,400 square feet on the main level, and then it's got a small basement of about 450 square feet. So we intend to sell the property by means of a request for proposal process. So probably in about a week, maybe sooner, or within the coming week, we will have that RFP issued. So watch for that. We'll publicly notice that, and if anyone is interested in receiving a copy of that, they're more than welcome to reach out to me, and I'll see that you get a copy of it. So, any questions?
So Kurt, could I just say,
Sure.
maybe it's not appropriate, I don't know, but the reason that we don't vote on this is because the city can sell property, but we are always involved in buying it, correct?
More or less. The mayor holds the authority to do a disposition on real property if it's significant, meaning over 1 acre in size or a valuation of $100,000 or greater. Then the public ordinances require us to bring it
To the council.
to the council in a public hearing format to allow people to, offer opinions. You can comment on it. But you're right, as far as acquisition of property, that involves a funding a funding portion of that. So that's why we bring any request for money funding to you, the council. So,
Yep. And this property was purchased with RDA money.
correct.
And so when we sell it, that money will go back to the RDA.
That's right.
It does have to, in fact, one of the things I just discussed with Steve, that this fund is in a negative position. And without the sale of this building and then some other buildings that the RDA owns, there would be a finding in our next audit. So, but this is part of our plan. It's something we do have to do to avoid finding.
It's a liquidity move, yeah.
So does the council have any questions for Kirk before we open the public hearing?
Is there any parking allocated towards this property, or is it just the building itself?
There is not. The reason I just showed the parking, and we'll show that again in the request for proposal that we send out, is just to show that there's plenty of parking available around the property, but to answer your question, no, there's no parking that comes with the sale of the property.
So does this building have an interest in that parking lot? Is that parking lot purely public, or is it owned somehow, or?
There was just north of it a right-of-way that was, that had undetermined ownership of it. So some years back, 3 or 4, I think, a quiet title action was filed. And it was determined that the city owns that little sliver of property on the north side of the building we're selling. But kind of in resolving that whole process, the owner at the time, the previous owner of that building, had a long-term lease. I think it was a 100-year lease. But obviously, when we bought it, we acquired those rights too. So the property just east of there again, Anderson Seed and Garden has, rights to that.
We don't have a 75-year lease.
Oh, okay. So we're down 20.
It's been about 25 years, yeah.
So, but that's probably what you were thinking of, Jeannie.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. I was just remembering the
Mm-hmm.
entire discussion when we kept talking about Center Block.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
There used to be a pool in the basement of that building.
All right.
Of the for sale building?
Yeah, there was a pool in the basement.
The health
Can there be a
spa.
pool again?
Yeah, it was the Athenian Health Spa.
Yep.
Wow,
Yeah.
Wow.
things change.
Also an auto parts store.
Yeah, there's our new rec center.
A pool and auto parts. Woo-hoo!
Any other questions for Kirk before we open the public hearing?
Good history on that building.
Okay. So this is a public hearing. I'd just like to clarify that the purpose of this public hearing is just to simply get interest or input from the citizens on whether the property is supposed to be sold or not. It's not to discuss specific proposals or uses. So if you're going to come and speak, please speak to the issue of selling. Because it is an RFP process, that's when any issues or discussions of that's the proposals will be handled by the city. So if you're going to come and speak, please make sure you're just speaking to whether or not the property should be sold, not to whom it should be sold or to what purpose it should be sold for. So at this time, I will open up the public hearing. As usual, please approach the microphone. You have 3 minutes to speak. Please make sure that you've signed in and left your email at the back, but the microphone is open.
My name is Michael Bingham. I'm the founder and director of Jump the Moon Art Studio that is in that building right now. We spent a lot of time and effort to transform that from a car parts store into what may be just one of the most innovative art studios for people with disabilities on the planet. We actually could go both ways on whether or not the building could be sold. We would love it if we could just stay there and not sell the building and continue to work with the city and remain there. Or if the decision is made that the building should be sold, I don't know how else to say it, but I hope that the city council and the mayor would consider what we have done with that space and what we do there and how important it is for the many people that utilize that building. I didn't know, so I have a lot of concerned people that use the studio, and it has become their happy place, their home. They made a ginormous thank you card for the city council and for the mayor. 130 faces on that card. If you'd like to see that, I'll take it over to my studio. I invite all of you to come and see what we have transformed that building into. 140 people on that card, that is 10% of the number of people we provide art activities for every year. 1,400 people are served out of that little building. And so don't sell it and keep us there, or do sell it and keep us there. That is the real desire and wish that we have. Just for your information, as far as Logan City goes, PBS NewsHour from Washington, D.C. just spent a day with us there a month ago, and we'll be airing pretty soon. I was hoping to have that date available for you. But Logan, Utah, including a beautiful drone shot of downtown and down Main Street, will be featured on national news, and our studio will be featured in a half-hour segment on national news. So that will bring some very nice attention to our city. But anyway, thank you for all you do for us. We greatly appreciate the city.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Yeah, make sure you let us know when it airs, because I don't always keep track of TV schedules, so make sure you let us know when that
I'll
airs.
let you know. Am I supposed to wait to see if there's any questions? I don't know how this works. Okay.
I'm going to take over. Is that okay? Council, nice to meet you, or nice to see you again. I think I know most of you. I'm Craig Adams. I just wanted to get up and speak my perspective of Jump Moon. As I hope everyone here is aware of what Jump Moon does, and of the challenge, the challenges of the people that attend and go. And I believe that the city has a significant responsibility to provide a place for such an avenue of what Mr. Bingham operates. I actually believe that he's a superhero. I'm actually here just to help support a superhero. I think he's wonderful. And I think the city would be doing a really bad disservice displacing Jump the Moon. So, Mayor, I don't know if it's your unilateral decision to sell that and make that call, or if it's the council, but I would certainly implore and ask you to consider the impact of displacing those seriously benefited people from such a wonderful, wonderful organization. And as long as Mr. Bingham is willing and able to operate that, I believe we have a responsibility as citizens to support that group of people that significantly benefit, that already have been dealt with so many challenges. I've been able to work with Michael through some of the building changes and needing to get some certain improvements so he could pass some of the codes, and it's been a pleasure to do that. So I'm not here to tell you whether to sell it or not, but I do really want you to hear my wish and my voice, which I think anybody who really understands what he does and for the type of care that he gives and the opportunity he gives, please don't displace them, but please don't make them go through the change of move, whatever that decision is. So, thank you.
Thank you, Craig.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is David Brook. I'm a resident of Logan, and that's the capacity in which I'm addressing you tonight. I got introduced to Michael and the program that he runs there, and I think superhero is a good explanation. If you haven't been there to see what goes on there, I don't think it would be good for any decisions to be made before you do that. I think if you haven't seen it before, your eyes will be open to something wonderful and incredible. The fact that a national television organization is doing a story about them is not surprising to me, because it is an incredible thing they have going there. I think it's unfortunate that they are faced with the possibility of maybe having to move again, because this is not the first time they've been faced with that. They've unfortunately been pushed out of other spaces they've been in. And there's also been a tremendous amount of work that's gone into this building, and from renovating to decorating to the art, the work of art the building has become on the inside. So definitely, I think it would be helpful for you to go and take a look at it. I also have some questions. One question is whether or not the city could simply enter into negotiations with the current tenant and talk to them about the potential for them purchasing it. I wonder if it's required to go out to an RFP, or if the city could simply go into negotiations with them. I would love to see that. I do think the ideal outcome would be for Jump the Moon to be able to own that building. However, there is precedent for the city owning facilities that in which nonprofit organizations operate cultural programs. I'm speaking of the Ellen Eccles Theater, for example, which I think is a fabulous asset for our community. And we are so much better a community because work was undertaken years ago to preserve that building, to renovate that building, to bring incredible programs and performances into that building. We are a better place because of great decisions that were made by the city in the past in relation to that building. I hope the city will consider this building in that same light and think about the value that is brought to our community by what happens inside those walls. If there is any way to figure out a way for them to stay, I would encourage you to find that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. Okay, seeing nobody else, I will close the public hearing on the proposed sale of real property. Our next action item is a public hearing. This is Resolution 24-43. Rich, would you like to walk us through these budget adjustments?
3 items to consider. The first is a request to appropriate $6,600 for a police grant for early intervention software. Second item is a request to appropriate $184,771 for it's an inter-fund sale of a piece of equipment from the water fund to the general fund. The general fund has the funds available to purchase, for lack of a better word, the asset. But the water department is requesting to appropriate those funds toward replacement that fits them better. Last item is a request to appropriate $140,000 toward the engineering services for right-of-way permit inspections. Really, this is the Google Fiber project that's going on, larger than anything else we've ever had to inspect. We do have great costs associated with that, but it is being paid by the vendor. So we're just requesting to appropriate those funds, and we don't.
And they come in sections. So they get a permit for a section.
So expect us to be coming back a few more times over the next several years. So they can do that.
Any questions for Rich? All right, this is a public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to Resolution 24-43, please come to the microphone, state your name, where you live, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Dr. Gail Yost, I live in Logan. I just wanted to know what early intervention software was going to do. Do you know what the...
You know, it's something that...
Come up to the microphone.
Oh, sorry.
For our viewing public.
You get to be official.
I don't quite...
We could hear you very well, however.
It's something that the state is requiring police departments to do, is to have an early intervention software. Captain Nazer is the one that is spearheading that. He knows the most about it. But it's something to help us to be able to identify officers that are having issues so that we can intervene with them before there's a bigger problem. It looks, some of it's as simple as missing work, but other parts is using force inappropriately, some of those kinds of things. So it's software to help us as administrators to see a trend and try to intervene with that before it becomes a problem.
Great. Thank you.
Part of our mental health
Yes.
program. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Seeing no one, I'll bring this back to the council for action.
I move we approve Resolution 24-43.
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion?
Too fast.
All those in favor of Resolution 24-43, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Resolution 24-43 passes. Our next public hearing is ordinance 24-23. This is a rezone of property at 1360 North, 200 West. Russ, would you like to come up and walk us through this one before we open the public hearing?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry, when everyone calls me Madam Chair.
Enjoy your last couple weeks.
Rezone. This is at the corner of 1400 North and 2nd West. The subject property is Lot 6 of Royal Point subdivision, approved in the mid-90s. This is 1.8 acres. The long-range plan calls the entire area out as MR. MR is mixed residential. It doesn't assign a specific density. The current zoning is MR12. The proposal is MR20. Bridger is the newer neighborhood. Most of this area was built in the 80s and 90s. This is the site. There are 7 fourplexes on lot number 6. Really, the area in question is the lower left side, which is highlighted in green. It's about 0.24 acres. It was subsequently subdivided and sold off to the applicant, Jed Willits, about 10 years ago.
Is that a legal subdivision?
No. The zoning history, again, in the 90s, the area was zoned R4, which wasn't a unit per acre. It was based on a base rate of 6,000 square feet plus. But in the 90s, they could have built 8 fourplexes, but they only built 7. In 2000, it was downzoned to MR14, and so at that point, it became legally existing non-conforming. So since 2000, you could not build anymore. In 2011, it was downzoned a little bit more to MR12. The proposal to MR20 would allow this small area to be developed. It would allow for up to 8 new units, because there are 28 existing, and the total lot number 6 would be 36 total units. The applicant has been here a couple times before. Originally, he thought he bought a 0.24 acre in MR12. He thought it was a legal subdivision. There was some confusion on both ends. But basically, he thought he could build a duplex from day one. The city council, after the city attorney worked with him on possibly trying to resolve the subdivision issue between 2011 and 2016. Ultimately, that could not be resolved. They were trying to acquire some signatures from property owners. In 2016, the city upzoned it to MR20, and the applicant was granted a design review permit, and that expired. In 2023, the city upzoned it again. The applicant received a design review permit and a building permit. Those expired in March of 2024. And this application differs from the other two in that the applicant is now asking for a fourplex on the site rather than a duplex. This is the design review documents. It is a larger than normal duplex, but the applicant proposed it this way. The city did not require a certain size duplex. The Planning Commission met about a month ago. They voted to recommend denial. We did have one public comment at that meeting. It was the neighbor to the south, and she spoke in opposition. Any questions?
What were their findings for denial? Can you just refresh? I think I got it here.
Yeah. So they have 4 findings. They are, sorry, I don't have it right here. It's 3. Sorry, 3 findings. Number 1 is the future land use plan. Number 2 is the Bridger area has specifically been downzoned to try to reduce the number of new multifamily developments. This is a direction that staff has been consistent on for the last 8 or 10 years. It follows the school superintendent and the principal. This area is about 77% multifamily to 23%, which is the highest multifamily ratio in all of our 6 neighborhoods. So we're trying to, balance that out a little bit as too much multifamily does come with some impact. So that's the direction we've been going the last 8 or 10 years consistently. Now with the new general plan effort and looking at these in a new lens, there may be new direction there, and we're happy to change course based on that effort. And then the third finding is just that it would allow 8 additional units, something that wasn't ever really contemplated.
Any questions for Russ before?
Without this rezone, is there anything that can be legally built on that property?
Yeah, the HOA could purchase it and build a playground or storage shed or, landscaping amenities for the units, but no new dwelling units would be allowed if it were downzoned.
So, well, it's not
Or,
down.
excuse me, if it were not upzoned.
So is there, this seems to be a serial request. I've been a part of, this is the third one, over time. And I wonder if, because I know that when I heard what happened at Planning Commission, there was a lot of discussion about not making deadlines because of some confusion, one way or the other. Would it be possible for us to reinstate the prior duplex and give him 6 months or something to finish it?
Reinstate the building permit for the
Right.
duplex? It's possible. It's not ideal. But
Because I feel like all we do is upzone, downzone, upzone, downzone. And I think that Planning Commission had that feeling as well. It's a lot of work for everybody, and if we could somehow reinstate that building permit for 6 months, certainly all of those issues could be resolved that have occurred. Yeah, I would think, but I don't know. And I don't know, Craig, how you feel about that, but it just seems like, I don't want to say nothing. You can't build anything there when we've already approved a duplex.
Yeah.
So is there a way that we could?
I think it's possible. I think the director would have to weigh in and look at that and consider past performance and what's happened in the past, but I think it is possible. I don't know if it's a great idea, but it is possible.
Okay.
So it would make sense then to just defer this, to investigate that possibility, continue this?
Well, I suppose what we could do is pass it that way.
Then we are upzoning it again.
No. No, we're just reinstating the building permit. We could reinstate the prior building permit.
But that's not what's being
That's not what's proposed.
Okay.
So we'll just have to vote on the ordinance as
is.
Probably. I was just trying to figure out, this just seems to be this recurring theme.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the attempt to resolve it and not.
But we could vote to continue it if we wanted. And give time to investigate.
And then maybe withdraw the.
Your options are like a yes, no, or continue, from my understanding. But.
Yeah, that's true. You're right.
Okay. Any other questions for Russ so we can open the public hearing?
So.
Okay, this is a public hearing. If anyone would like to speak to ordinance 24-23, please come to the microphone, state your name, where you live. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes, and do please make sure you sign in outside of the council doors with your information and email.
My name is Bonnie Hoff. I live in the Adams School area. This, however, is in District 2 of the voting area, and I visited in this immediate neighborhood. I would like to suggest no more than a duplex, simply because ingress, egress, and parking is very, very limited. The ingress, egress it's a challenge to find specific addresses. And with families already there, adding any more than a duplex seemed like it could be a safety hazard. I wasn't aware, because I visited a family who lived in that area, but that would be my suggestion to the council, to do no more than a duplex if it is approved for the builder, the owner, the presenter of this, for this public hearing, particularly from the perspective of ingress, egress, and personal safety for families.
Thank you, Bonnie.
I'm Jed Willits, the owner of this property. I've sent you a couple emails over the past few weeks. I think one thing, when I initially went to do this, I really wanted to kind of blend in with the other 7 fourplexes. I don't know why. I did 3,250 square feet, and I really wished I could back up right when COVID hit, when this was approved. And in November 19, it basically expired in May of 20. That was left out of the timeline. That really affected a lot of things as far as, and then cost-wise, I wish I would have just hammered it and got it done. Because right now, that's about a $600,000 building to build. And quite frankly, if there's 3 occupants per unit, or 2 families, there's no way. I had this for sale for a little bit of the lot, and I had 3 different builders interested in it, and their main thing is it doesn't pencil out. So if it doesn't go through, and some of them I know called and talked to planning and zoning, and they were told, and that's why specifically I didn't send it through zone change and design review at the same time, because as soon as I did that before, the hourglass flips over, and it just keeps churning. And then, but if I can't do a 4-plex, then it would be a whole lot smaller, little duplex. So in my mind, a little out of place. My concept with a 4-plex, I'll just go through these really quick. This is it's basically the same design, same concept as it was before. The garage units basically are redesigned to meet all fire and everything structural. Those would be 1-bedroom, handicap accessible from the side units. So basically, and that's the concept of that. And then the main other spot would stay the same, the units down in the middle and then up top. And then, Russ, thank you. These are the main findings, those 3 for the Planning Commission for recommending denial, that you can go ahead and, the first one, Logan City identifies the MR basically, and then go ahead and go to the next one. I think I have these spelled out. Of the East Royal Point subdivisions, lot 1 through 6. Number 2, lot 2, that's already, and I know it was done a couple years ago, but it wasn't a big rush to like hurry and downzone it, whatever they did with that piece. So I don't know why in the past it's been like, okay, 2 weeks later we have to downzone it. So you can't really go through the design review process by itself. You're kind of.
But lot number 2, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
But lot number 2 was a totally different issue.
Yeah, but it's the same Royal Point subdivision.
It was already built though. I mean, there was no new building.
Yeah, I agree, but it is still one of the lot 1 through 6 Royal Point subdivision.
Okay, sorry.
It was changed a couple years ago, it wasn't changed back. I'm just saying in general. And then go ahead and flip to the next one. Bridge neighborhood downzone, so that not as many multi-family units. I never looked at this as a new multi-family development. It's really a single existing lot in an existing development. So it's not like, oh, I've got a brand new subdivision of townhomes going in, or 4-plexes or something.
He can have more time.
Oh, right here.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple more minutes.
Through the MR 12 zone will prevent future multifamily development, 12 acres. I would be more than willing, and you could use this sheet and add more signatures on it, but to put a restriction where I could only build a 4-plex and nothing larger. I'd be just fine with that, and go ahead and flip a couple more. Out of all those Royal Point subdivision, this was 1.8 acres, almost 2 acres. A lot of the other ones, most of the ones are 1.25, 1.30. This right next to me, the one up top, these are the 2 largest lots in this lot 6 that has 10 parking stalls for their 4-plex. They need 8. Mine down here has 11, room for 11. And I know the city likes infill. I know, Governor Cox came out the beginning of the month and talked about, there's gonna have to be places for our kids and for people and families. And I'm just, I would really encourage to make it affordable so it can actually have an income that comes in and pay the payment on what it's gonna cost to build. That's really why I really would like to put a fourplex on this lot. So, any questions?
Question for the proponent?
I don't have any right now. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Jed.
Thanks, Jed. Anyone else
Public
like to
comments still?
speak to this in the public hearing? All right, seeing no one, I will bring it back to the council for action. And discussion.
I guess I'll make a comment that I understand the desire to downzone areas, the Bridger neighborhood. I used to live 2 blocks from here, and empathize and understand with the desire to downzone parts of this area, and I think it's necessary and I think it's needed for that area. But I also understand the desire to fill in a little lot like this that doesn't have much other use and is good for infill and is good for housing. And it will have an effect on the neighborhood, but I do think a fourplex fits in there decently and is a decent use of the lot. And so that would be my thought. And I guess with that, I mean, if no one else has any comments, I'll make a motion, but.
I have a comment. I think it is frustrating probably to see something come over and over for upzone and downzone, but at the same time, I don't think we are tasked with being a punitive type of body to make a decision based on that.
That we've done it numerous times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think he's met the requirement to go through the process every single time that has lapsed. So I'm willing to look at this on its own merit rather than the history of this.
Can I ask a question, Russ? Yeah. If we upzone it to MR20, what is the maximum he could build there?
8 units.
So he could build an 8-plex. But if we approved this with a contingent on the deed restriction, am I getting my terminology right?
But
So we could approve it with the deed restriction, that he
that's
could
why
only build a 4-plex.
He would have to willingly file that deed restriction because you cannot conditionally rezone property in the state. Is that
correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
And last time, the planning, if I remember correctly, the planning commission approved it because there was a design review at the same time. So they approved the rezone and the project together.
Correct. And that was also mentioned at this latest planning commission. Had they had seen a design review or had more assurance that they were going to get exactly something, they may have voted differently than 4-0 to deny. So they did mention that.
So Craig, help me understand if what would be the process then? Because I'm hearing the tendency to want to approve, but to make sure that that deed restriction is accompanying it. So
The property owner has to, as I said, the property owner has to offer that deed restriction and do it voluntarily. It cannot be a condition of the rezone. The city's trying to get away from deed restrictions.
I know.
And that was one of the reasons for the plan development overlay. Sometimes deed restrictions are a little bit difficult to track. This project doesn't lend itself to a plan development overlay.
Right.
The other thought is, as you're zoning and making zoning decisions, make them based on not a single project. And Gene's mentioned this before several times. You gotta look at all the projects that could be rezoned and sold to somebody else.
But the deed restriction would prohibit any new owner from doing more than whatever was specified in the deed restriction, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
But we would have to continue it because we don't have that deed restriction in hand.
How long is the process for him to file a deed restriction if he were to do so?
You'd have to get it drafted, sent to my office, we'd have to review, and then go from there. It shouldn't take that long, but again, we've tried to get away from deed restrictions to discourage those.
If we want to do it though, is it possible to continue this to December 3rd and have a deed restriction done in that time, or is that an unrealistic timeline?
No, that's a realistic timeline. On my end of things, I don't know if that happens.
Yeah,
Can I put my new back card?
I've always said this, anytime we do this, I'm always really reluctant to rezone when somebody could build 8 if we rezone, and then all of a sudden the planning commission has a project that fits the code or fits what the zone is. So I'm very uncomfortable with rezoning it to MR20 because of that fact that based on the existing units there, it could go up to an 8-plex. So.
You'd have a hard time getting 8 in there.
Well, what's the council's?
I think I'd have a hard time.
I would like to move to continue ordinance 24-23
To December 3rd?
to December 3rd.
I definitely don't want to make that timeline any more ridiculous, so I'd be willing to do December 3rd, but I definitely would want it to be quick.
Unless.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
my opinion would be if he came back December 3rd with a deed restriction voluntarily. Sounds great to me. Do I want to do it 4 times? Probably not. So.
I just feel like we've been kind of encouraged by the state to find ways to infill, and this just kind of fits that perfectly. I mean, there should have been a 4-plex there to begin with.
And does 2 versus 4 really make a big, I don't know.
No, and there's plenty of parking for 4, so I'd be okay with that too.
I'll second Jeannie's.
Seconding Jeannie's.
Continue it to
Okay.
December 3rd.
Do we want to have more discussion, or are we ready to vote on that?
And you're not continuing the public hearing, correct?
Oh, yes, we're continuing yet without a public hearing. Thank you. Thanks for the reminder.
I'm always open for public hearings.
I know you are.
I know you are. I'm okay skipping the 5-year-old's bedtime and staying here all night. It's fine.
I would like to see something built there
Me too.
instead of nothing.
Okay, so we're ready to vote then? All those
Yes,
in
Madam
favor
Chair.
of continuing ordinance 24-23 to December 3rd, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, ordinance 24-23 is continued. Our next public hearing is a code amendment. This is ordinance 24-22. Mike, this is a ordinance amending our land development code definition for behavioral and mental health receiving center to include a provision for supportive housing.
Yes, it is. I
will leave it to you to decide how much. I know we've talked about this at our workshop, so.
Yeah, I'll just cover let me get there. During the workshop, Jeannie raised an issue with the use of supportive too many times, so in the version that I sent you, I took out 2 words, also in supportive, so that it reads, "A behavioral and mental health receiving center may provide on-site, long-term, short-term, or physical housing," onward. So I just took out that supportive and the also, so.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
That's it.
Does anyone have any questions for Mike or want any more information shared before we open the public hearing? Okay. Thanks, Mike, for your brevity. This is a public hearing. Anyone who would like to speak to ordinance 24-22, please come to the microphone, state your name, where you live, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes and make sure that you do sign in at the outside of the door.
Dr. Gail Yost again, living in Logan. Are we anticipating that we will be needing this in the near future?
We need it now.
Yeah, I feel like
There's a tremendous need for supported housing.
Okay, that's what I know there's a tremendous need for public housing. Behavioral and Mental Health Receiving Center is especially helpful because some of these people become homeless if they don't have the support. And so we really need to make sure that they have the support, and if they have any kind of dysfunctions or impairments, they really need to have a receiving center that will give them the kind of support that will keep them housed and working among the regular community. So I think this is a great idea. I think we need more support for homeless too, because I've been on the homeless council for a number of years now. And we need to make sure that people who have these impairments may not have started that way before they became homeless, or may have caused, these impairments may have caused the homelessness. Either way, they need to have help. And so I'm all for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yost. I'll just clarify, this is not specifically housing for the homeless. This is specifically to have supportive housing for those individuals with emotional or psychological or developmental problems. So it's not really tied to homeless services, but yes, you're right. As you said, some people who are in this that need that supportive housing without it could end up becoming homeless.
Yes.
But it is not designated as homeless shelter or any homeless housing. So just to clarify your question on that. Anybody else like to speak to this? Hello, Mrs. Smith.
Hello, Beth Smith. I'm the CEO of Bearable Mental Health. I hadn't planned on talking tonight because I've talked to you individually, but just want to offer my thanks to each of you for the time that you've given us in listening to us about what this exactly is and what it's for in our community, and to planning and zoning also. They've both been wonderful to us. I just want to say that individuals who struggle with mental illness struggle with other things in their life too, and housing is one of those things. And the beauty of this project is that we will have that 24/7 support on the property right there where those 20 units are. We don't have that anywhere else in our housing facilities, and we just feel it's very, very valuable. So thank you, and I hope you vote for it. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth.
So is it valuable to talk about why we're doing this definition? Because it was not the original definition for the behavioral mental health receiving center did not include any opportunity for housing. And when it was presented to Planning Commission, it had housing on the campus plan, and they were, without a change in the definition, they were unable to approve it.
Yeah, because of that, otherwise public areas zone public are not eligible for housing. So this does allow housing in the public zone when it's attached to a receiving center.
Right, correct.
Any other public? Right, seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the council for action.
I'll move approval of ordinance 24-22.
I'll second that. I'm too slow tonight.
Is there any further discussion?
No, I think it's great.
Actually, yes, I don't know if Beth Smith, maybe if you could answer a couple of questions. I think I asked those questions when I met with you. Can you tell us more about the type of housing that would be available?
Yes, so we have approximately about 25 units, and in those 25 units over the years, we've learned kind of what we would really want to do when we do our next one. And the first thing we will do is they will all be all 20 units, and if we can do more than 20 on that particular space, we want to try and do as many as we can, but right now it's looking like 20 units. They will be studio apartments because individuals who have struggled. We do have other apartments that can house like a couple relationship. These will be studio units, and they will be built very, very sturdy. We had an individual who took the plumbing out of one of our apartments, and if you've toured the hospital new behavioral health unit, you've seen that they've built things quite sturdy on the behavioral health unit, and I think that's how these apartments will look. Is that answering your question?
Yeah, like what kind of arrangement of length of stay or
yes.
lease, I guess.
Yeah, so we have a facility over in Bergen City that is pretty much if you get there, you can stay for as long as it works for you. Here in Logan, we do a year. We try and bring you in and teach you how to be a good renter within a year. And so within that year, we're also looking for your next rental as a patient at Bear River Mental Health. Now, when the year happens, do we kick you out because it's 365 days today? No, we don't. But for the most part, we try and help people within a year have the ability to be independent in their own rental. That's really hard because rentals are really expensive, and the rents on this apartment complex will be anywhere from like say $100 to $300. They'll be very, very reasonable for the mentally ill. We look at what they make per month, and we try and do something really reasonable for them. But we try and do it what we're doing within a year. Some get placed earlier than a year. Others go a little bit longer than a year. So,
thank you.
Any other questions?
Thanks, Beth.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? All right, so we do have a motion and a second. All those in favor of ordinance 24-22, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ordinance 24-22 passes. We will now move on to our workshop items. The charming Mike DeSimone is going to walk us through the first two of these. First is ordinance 24-25, which is property annexation.
Okay, this is and I think you've seen this before. This is just a workshop on an annexation of just under 60 acres. Just to orient you, there's the airport to the north, Airport Road, 10th West. It's this property right here. It is just north of a property we annexed approximately 2 years ago. And it's about 2200 north is the location. This is a little more drilled into it. It's this chunk of ground on the east side of 10th West, generally currently undeveloped. So as far as process goes, you accepted the petition in October, the recorder certified the petition, did all the noticing. As part of that acceptance, it gets kicked back to planning and zoning for their recommendation to you, and that happened just last week. And then there's a protest period that actually expires today, obviously a workshop today, and then a hearing in December. So currently the future land use plan map shows this as airport on the north, industrial on the south. The existing zoning around it is airport, there's some industrial, and then also industrial on the south side. The proposal is to bring this in as industrial. There's a project that's tentatively lined up for this piece right here. It will probably go through design review and start that sometime in January or February. They're waiting on their final delineation work.
So why wouldn't we queue up the airport zone straight across?
You mean just around it?
No.
Oh, yeah, why, yeah, I guess.
If you go back
why
to
is that little section off there?
See, why wouldn't we just leave that airport? So we have a delineated line that's airport.
I'm not quite understanding the question.
The top parcel of the bunch?
Top parcel.
Oh, you mean just right here? Just
Yeah.
this piece right here in
Yeah.
industrial?
Yeah.
Are you wanting more
I
storage
guess the
units?
question is, given the distance to the airport and what we know with the airport, does it make sense to promote airport uses that far south?
Okay.
And from our opinion, probably not. The one distinction between the two zones is that industrial allows for a wider range of uses, but the nature of the area is more industrial. We know that on this western site, this is a construction yard, rock, sand, gravel. We've talked to these folks about they're going to come into annex in Logan at some point in the near future. And this actually may turn into a warehouse over here, and this yard gets shifted to the west. So it's probably more appropriate for industrial.
Okay.
I can go through the range of uses.
Proponent asked for industrial, so.
Pardon me?
The proponent asked for industrial.
Yeah, we talked to them about that, and we felt that would be appropriate request.
And that airport parcel that's just to the east there, that's bordered by the
Yeah, I don't know
industrial.
why that is that. I don't know why there's industrial on either side of that.
I thought we had
Is that
a
a
geographic overlay for airport,
Well, we do.
which we're now eating into.
But why this piece over here is surrounded by industrial, I just don't know. I don't know the history behind that.
I don't know the history behind that either, but what I don't want to do is keep crowding, not having the airport, because there's height restrictions and things like that on the airport overlay that.
Yeah, so here's the overlay map. And this site is over in this area. This was the Zollinger annexation we did 2 years ago. And so it's outside the approach zone, inner approach zone, but it obviously is in the area that they have to be concerned about height.
Right.
The project that we know that is coming forward is not going to have a height issue. It's, basically a single-story industrial type of building. But they will have to talk to the airport about that, just to confirm that they're not going to cause a problem.
So if it came in as airport, would that project not be allowed then that they're considering, or would that still be allowed in the airport zone?
I'll show you the table of uses and we can
Thank
make
you.
that call.
That would be helpful.
Here's the environmental look at it, and they're in the process of doing the delineation on this site. There's an older delineation on this site. This has got some existing trailers out there and some construction equipment. So here's the difference between the two types of zones from a use perspective. So the IP is industrial, the AP is airport. They're fairly compatible. I mean, I could put a golf course out there at the airport, can't do it as industrial.
That'd be a fun golf course.
I know,
Maybe mini golf.
yeah, that's
Salt
right.
Lake has one, right?
Indoor commercial shooting range is allowed in industrial, but these uses are kind of cross-pollinate back and forth. And then when you get into sales and service, you have a wider range of things like amusement, commercial indoor, and industrial, automobile sales and service, rentals, things like that. And then when you jump down into the industrial types of uses, like a contractor storage yard, outdoor storage is just an outright permitted use. You could do it in the airport zone, but there's a wider range of uses that are oriented towards commercial and industrial. The one use that's not permitted industrial is the small commercial storage units. Those would be allowed in the airport, and those we've tried to push out as far as we can. So, but we think it's more appropriately zoned as industrial.
So
But they
your
do-
biggest concern is the height restriction piece of the
Well,
airport?
I know that we established an airport overlay zone for a reason, and I just don't want us to be encroaching on the ability of the airport to function because we've allowed some structure that's going to impact airplane safety.
Hopefully not literally.
Yeah, they'll be required to get an FAA review on anything within this.
Within that zone?
Yeah.
So that would supersede anything that was allowed under our industrial zone if they said no?
It's just going to be height.
It just looks at
It would
height.
just be height, I was
Yeah.
saying, but if we allowed a certain height and they came back and said, no, that's too high, the FAAs
That would supersede.
would govern, okay. Any other questions for
But they
Mike?
do have to do that because it's within that oval, right?
Yep.
Okay, and what about the brown line?
The brown line, this one, the approach area, it's got a.
No, the
No, the
brown.
airport
circle.
influence area.
There's a distance out. This airport influence area, I would assume that it's had the same conversation with the airport about heights.
Is it, okay.
I just don't know for certain if there's an FAA clearance requirement for that far out or not.
Okay. Because I know you can't have housing close.
Right, you cannot have housing that close. When we've done a couple of projects further south, we do direct everything to the airport as well, and they have commented on, projects down this area as far as height goes. But generally, they don't have an issue further south to go.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mike on this one? Okay. Would you like to walk us through the boundary adjustment 2421?
Okay, this is, I think you've seen this probably 3 times now. This is a request to modify the boundary between Logan and Providence. This is on the east side of both cities. In Providence, they've got a pending subdivision on this area. This is all undeveloped, obviously, in Logan. Cliffside's to the north, River Heights is to the west. It involves really this line right here. Our current boundary is this blue line. So it's when we annexed it in, it came in with this description. The owners, well, and the surveys were done, basically paper surveys. And so so when we annexed it, everybody said, okay, it looks fine, but now on the ground, it really doesn't reflect what the ownership thought they had. And this yellow line follows along a fence line that they traditionally have felt like was their property line. So this is what the proposal is to adjust that line up to the north. And these 2 owners, or the previous owners, have agreed to it through a boundary line adjustment, just to clarify their ownership. And then it also cleans up the description going to the west. The current boundary, so this is an old ditch line. The current boundary is to the west of that. What we want to see is just run the center line of the ditch, as that's also a common property boundary. And the same thing with this area along this subdivision. This is the plat that eventually will get filed. And questions?
Questions for Mike?
Seemed a lot, makes sense.
All right, thank you, Mike. Appreciate you.
Okay.
All right. I don't see Amanda.
No.
Oh, we get you.
The kinder, gentler version.
The kinder, yeah. 4 in a row.
I know. Sorry.
So this is a workshop on Resolution 24-44, which is our capper.
Caper.
Capper, tomato, tomato.
Tomato. So the caper is our annual reporting. We look back at like in this case, project year 23. It's required by HUD to evaluate what projects we've actually implemented and executed. And one of the challenges with the Community Development Block Grant Program is everything is always delayed. We're delayed because of construction season. We're delayed in terms of timing when we get funding. So in this case of the 23 evaluation, we're actually looking at projects that were done in 2022. So just some background on this. This is the last year of the 5-year comp plan. We adopted a new comp plan this year, which will run from 24 to 28. And when we look at the objectives of both the comp plan and the annual action plan, the city has, as their objectives, have said we want to put 40% of our funding towards infrastructure projects or LMI areas. So these are the non-glamorous sidewalks, ADA crossings, trails, things like that. Things that benefit a lot of folks to get to the bus stop, get to the park, get to work, whatever. We also have a percentage going towards the remediation of access and mobility barriers. That's to enable folks that have a challenge, mobility issues. This helps people get around. And then we have 30% that goes towards community needs. So in terms of what we've done in 2023, we completed a sidewalk project on 9th North, 1st West, sidewalk on 1st South and Main, East Poplar Crossing, and then we paid for, funded the Whittier Center exterior paint remediation project. So all of these collectively benefited approximately 19,000 Logan residents, of which 13,000 were considered LMI. This is the 9th North, 1st West project. Put in a sidewalk across the street from one of the city parks. It just provides connections in that neighborhood. Here's 1st South and Main. Here's what it looked like before. Thanks to Paul's group, they did all this work and design work. Helps provide people a safe way to get around this establishment to get to Main Street.
I walked on it the other night and I was super grateful for it.
There you go.
It's really nice.
100 East Poplar Avenue crossing. This is down at the bottom of that little hill. So it's a flashing beacon that allows people to safely cross that street right there. Obviously, there's a park on this side, there's a park on this side, and this ties into our broader trail system. And then painting the Whittier Center. It's a big building. The city used to be, a school. And now they run a lot of different programs out of there. So And other than that, we have the admin overhead costs. So we do spend about $100,000 toward admin. And then we use part of the funding to help pay for our new comp plan as well. Thank you. Any questions?
Questions for Mike? AKA Amanda?
Way to go, Amanda.
You need to lecture her on not being here next week.
Yeah.
She was here earlier, wasn't she?
All right, thanks, Mike.
Okay.
All right. Next workshop is on ordinance 2426. This is vacating a public right-of-way. Paul. How are you tonight? We get Russ too?
Ooh, it's a twofer.
It's a twofer?
I brought backup.
Wow.
Should we
This
be
is
worried?
great cooperation between planning and public works.
I'm going to do a quick project introduction, and then I'm going to hand it over to Paul for the right-of-way vacation. So,
Does look familiar.
yeah, just keep going. Okay, so recently the city completed the First West street project. It included a new bridge over the Logan River. It required some demolition of properties, and it required a realignment of that street. It no longer goes straight. There's some curve. And there's 2 residual properties from that project on both sides of the street. And the location here is in the Woodruff neighborhood. It's at 600 South and 100 West. So this aerial shows the old 100 West alignment. It ran straight down into a T intersection at 6 South. This is how it currently looks. The whole road kind of swings east. And you can see the 2 residual properties there, one on the west and one on the east. The current zoning is MR12, so that should ring a bell from our previous conversation. The city had a couple of discussions on what would be the best use here. We threw out the idea of maybe some small parks, maybe a trailhead. But we thought affordable housing might be a good idea here. It's already zoned MR12. They're about a quarter acre. Maybe we should pursue that a little bit more. So this summer we sent out an RFQ, and we received 3 submittals from 3 different home builders. They were all local. And we ended up selecting Visionary Homes. We had a selection committee meet. We went over the grading criteria. Basically, the goal is to find build affordable housing for essential workers that are income qualified, and we want the lowest price point we can possibly get. We are also looking at a deed restriction so that they can't just flip this. They would invest a number of years before they could realize that equity. And at this point, we're still maybe 30% into the project, but one of the main things we need to do in order to create the west parcel is ask for a vacation, because that is old right-of-way. But this is the plan that the home builder would like to be able to do. If the right-of-way is vacated, they would have enough land to essentially build 2 4-unit townhome products. They would be individually sold, individually owned. The landscaping would be in commons, and we're still working on the amenity package there. But if the vacation goes through, you'd be looking at 0.33 acres on the west and 0.34 acres on the east. This is the home design that Visionary Homes thinks would be a good product here. It's a little bit larger. It's about 1,400 square feet, so it could allow a family to grow. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bath, and then a rear alley load garage. So the garages would be on the backside here. This would also have a backside garage. So that would be the front facade. That would be the rear facade. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Paul.
All right.
Because Paul always gets the vacations.
Yes, yeah.
It's actually a question, Russ.
Take a vacation, Paul.
Russ, before you step away, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
And maybe you covered this, but they're, with the deed restriction, they are going to be restricted to owner occupied as well, correct? With that deed restriction? Okay.
Owner occupied for a period of time. We
Sure.
still need to finalize those terms.
Okay.
Who were the other construction companies that bid for that?
One of them was JAAB. They had done some campus residential projects, and then the other was neighborhood nonprofit housing, Joshua Carr and his group. Those were the three.
Thank you.
All right. As sometimes happens with right-of-way vacations, there is a parallel process happening with a subdivision design review. And so that's happening in this case. With the right-of-way vacation, we could do a subdivision with it. We'd rather not do a subdivision twice. So we're just letting the parallel processes play out. This is the preliminary plat they've submitted and that they would like to do that is going through the subdivision process. And as you can see, this portion of that west leftover piece somewhat matches that shape, and that, I don't know what color that is, that pink color would be the portion of the old 100 West right-of-way that would be necessary to vacate for that, for this project to play out.
When that road was straight, why isn't that little piece in the middle there?
Like the little back out corner, you mean?
That little, you know.
Because that's still the road.
Because
It turns out this right here.
Yeah.
Oh, it's still a road?
Still road.
Yeah, so if you look at
Is
this
that
aerial
emergency services turnaround?
photo,
Is that
Right there.
Oh, okay. So you don't vacate that one?
no, because for this 100 West alignment, to meet fire code, there needs to be a turnaround
Oh, okay, okay.
on that.
For the fire engine.
Yep. So this would be the proposed vacation. The pink portion would be vacated to this piece of land, making it the shape you have seen. We are going through the necessary noticing. It's posted on the property, and we've sent notices to the adjacent property owners within a certain distance. I always try to give, if there's any comments that we receive through the noticing process. I don't know that that process spurred a comment, but Craig Humphreys did get a phone call, the fire marshal. Someone called and asked about this road meeting fire code now that it's been built. He went out, looked at it, verified, called me and said, yes, it does meet fire code, that's good. So if that comes up, that's the only comment I've heard or received. By the time we bring it back in 2 weeks for an action item and a public hearing, we will have met the noticing period, and I can give you a report on any comments we received. Any questions? Oh, and pending this being approved, we would not then record the vacation plat until the subdivision process is also approved, and those two would be recorded at the same time.
Okay.
We would hold those to happen that way.
So this might be a question for Russ then, but that little parcel that's to the north, that little area, is that going to be the responsibility of the property owners to maintain and make sure that it's not
Yes.
just weeds and nastiness?
Yeah, so if you go back to that slide that has the green areas. So their HOA will maintain
Okay.
anything that's shaded green.
Okay. Thanks.
The only other comment I was going to make, in case someone reaches out to you, you're aware, the letter we sent out yesterday, today we found an error in it. So we sent replacement letters today. So people will receive 2, but it's for 1 vacation, not 2.
Because you asked for 2 weeks of vacation, you really wanted 3.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
That's a separate letter. Any questions?
Any questions for Paul?
No.
Nope.
Right.
Straightforward.
Thanks, Paul.
Cool project.
That's a great
It's a cool project.
Yeah, our next two workshops are on power sales contracts. Mark, would you like to come and walk us through Resolution 2446 and 2447?
Welcome to City Council.
Look at that snappy tie.
Super fly.
They always make
Power time.
They always make me laugh.
And Mike already left, so I can't give him a hard time about how you look so much more professional.
Oh my gosh, don't do that. All right, my presentation will
Your tie too.
effectively cover both of these,
Riches though.
power plants.
both of these resolutions.
Okay.
So I'll try and go through this fairly quickly. There's a lot of information. In 2023, UAMPS did their own integrated resource plan, which Logan City did their own just last year. And as they went through their study, they found that UAMPS as a whole was very short on both baseload power and peaking power. And as they researched different types of power generation, they felt that natural gas was the most cost competitive way to do this. There are two proposed sites. One's a peaking unit located down in, or up in Idaho. And one is a baseload unit located down in Millard County.
Do they call them peakers?
We call them peakers.
Okay.
So these peakers are similar technology to what we're building up on 1800 North. They're reciprocating combustion engines. And then the combined cycle is just kind of like the turbines we have down at Sauk, only they capture heat and they're more efficient because they produce energy out the heat. The ones we have are just single cycle. They're not as efficient. I think I went through most of that pretty much already. They're both units are capable of hydrogen mix when that becomes practical in the future. And the locations were chosen primarily due to location near natural gas high pressure lines and also transmission lines.
So they won't need to go through any authorization for new transmission lines then? Or is
No, they'll have to still, so you'll see on this first item on the date line, the cluster study is essentially the transmission study.
Okay.
And
I'm getting all like that.
yeah, 2025. So, so the one down in Millard County is a large single combined cycle unit, kind of the same thing, capable of burning hydrogen. This is a base load generation. And then the timelines are a little bit different. I don't know if you noticed, one's got a commercial operation date of, I think, 2029, and one's got 2031. This one's the slower one.
This is the one in Idaho?
2031. Okay, this kind of goes over, so you'll see the levelized cost of energy. You'll see this term a lot in the power industry. UAMPS is, so the first line, CF stands for capacity factor. That's how often it runs. If you only run it 20%, you're paying 167 per megawatt hour. If you can run it 60% of the time, that price drops to 93 megawatt out, or $93 per megawatt hour. Obviously, the more you run these units, the more cost effective they are. Peakers by nature are not run very much, and so they're expensive to run, but they're critical to cover our peak loads in the summers and the winters. The bolded numbers are kind of where UAMPS anticipates running both these units at. And this is just a graphical version of that pricing, and the red stars show you where they anticipate being able to run these, hoping to run these units at in order to get that cost for energy. Looked at lots of different market opportunities in the board meetings over the last couple of 3 years. So we have two kind of flavors of energy, right? We have a power purchase agreement where an entity comes and says, hey, we'll sell you energy at so much per kilowatt hour. The other flavor is that UAMPS owns it, and the individual members sign up to be part of that project, and UAMPS is an owner of that project. And they've determined that they feel like the best way to proceed with this and the most cost-effective way is to have UAMPS own the units, and then we'll be a participant in the project.
Does that limit the opportunity for another state to swoop in and take the output?
Yeah, because we'll own the output, or UAMPS will own it, and the individual member cities will sign up for their particular share. And I'll go over what Logan City's share is going to be shortly.
What about liability?
About what?
Liability.
I mean, it belongs to UAMPS and the members. It'll be owned and operated by UAMPS and members. So, yeah, there's some liability there, for sure. We have several plants that UAMPS owns. There's a plant in Payson that produces power by natural gas that UAMPS owns. Horse Butte Wind Farm up in Idaho Falls is owned by UAMPS. Hunter Coal Station up in Emery County is jointly owned by UAMPS, Bonanza Power, and Pacific Core. So, I mean, we do this quite a bit. The reason why this maybe feels like it's rushed is Pacific Core is changing the way they take application for their cluster studies or their transmission studies, and they're changing the way they structure the costs, and we're kind of hoping to get this in before the end of December so that we can take advantage of the cheaper methods to take advantage of these cluster studies.
I love frugality.
Right, but some of these items are tricky, right? Under the third bullet point, you'll see that before we can even begin this process, we have to show evidence of site control. Not to say we have to own the property, but to say that we've got agreements with property owners that we can purchase that property or lease it.
And those withdrawal penalties are high.
Pacific Core requires $5 million just to do the study. And then if
That's
you...
just a deposit.
Yeah, just a deposit. And if you go in, they're like, oh, never mind, I didn't want to do that.
They're charging $45
They
million.
can charge you a withdrawal penalty of up to 9 times what the study costs. So
I'm assuming they typically charge that full.
yeah,
9 times.
the reason for that is because in the recent past, people just jam up the queue, and then they just do it because they think they might have a project, and they pull out of it. So Pacific Core is getting a little more stringent on costs, so to try and keep the junk projects out of the queue.
So what is the total cost of the cluster study?
I don't know that at this point. I think it's, I don't know. I can find out.
Yeah, if you could bring that back in 2 weeks,
Yeah.
that would be great.
Let's see, the study takes 1 year to complete, and if we don't get in this December 2024, January 2025 timeframe, we don't know when we can get back in for the cluster study. The earliest would be January 2026. So again, we're a little bit hoping to get into that threshold.
Will they do both of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Same time.
So major milestones: get control of the land, engage an owner engineer to do specifications for the RFP and the contracting for construction and procurement. Get the air permit for the facilities, state permits, county permits, and then some of these items have really long lead times. You can see there are 36-month lead times. So if you want to have it built 3 years, you got to order it today.
Does the location choice have anything to do with the feasibility of passing or getting an air permit, or?
A little bit. I mean, typically if you're in a more rural area, for example, we could build this facility in Logan because we're a low attainment area. We looked at another site down near Eagle Mountain, but same thing, it's a low attainment area and we couldn't get it to work. So once we kind of see a path through the transmission, then they're going to start doing proposals for engineering, procurement, and construction contractors. But they got to have that transmission locked down before they dare do any of that. And we have to do all this other stuff in order to begin to do the cluster studies with the transmission. Natural gas power sales contracts. So there's a lot of terms in here. Craig's been through this with UAMPS legal. Cradle to grave is a pretty common term. That just basically means you build it, you run it, and then when it's done, you got to take it down and get rid of it. Contracts obviously have to be in place before any bonds can be issued. And this sales contract also facilitates cost allocation to the different people who want to belong to this project. And also on the base load unit that's located in Millard County, we're going to do a joint ownership with UMPA. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. UMPA is a smaller joint action agency similar to UAMPS. They only have like 6 members. It's like Provo, Spanish Fork. I can't remember them all, but similar to UAMPS. So we're going to jointly own that, and they're going to take some of the output from that plant, the base load plant, not the peaking plant. Let's see. These are just terms that allow in the power purchase contract, power sales contract, that allow us to do the financing instruments and billings. This last point's pretty standard. Nobody gets billed for energy until the energy is being output or if the project gets terminated. And then you got to pay whatever debts you have on whatever you accumulated. So they'll build this, spend the next several years building it, and then once the power starts coming out, they'll take that cost that's financed over 20 years, and that's how they'll figure out what the levelized cost of energy is. Again, this is similar to other contracts that UAMPS has with its members, and we're members of NEBO. We're not part of Horse Butte Wind, but we're also part of Vail. There's a stipulation in it that we have to get 85% of the subscription before the project will move forward, and they're close to that. They're still soliciting prescription from UAMPS members to say, hey, how many megawatts do you want out of this project? The project can only be terminated by a supermajority vote, in other words, 75%. And that has to do with your entitlement share and also your per capita. For example, Logan City is a bigger member. We have a fairly large share, but we also have a very large per capita. So Logan City has a big vote in this sense.
So it's not one vote per member. It's
Correct.
based on those.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can only exit the project under the terms of the power sales contract. You'll recall that we had lots of off-ramps with the carbon-free power project, the nuclear project.
Yes, we
This
did.
is not really,
This one doesn't
there's not
have
quite
that.
as many off-ramps here. Once you dive in, for obvious reasons, they're committed to a lot of costs.
Yeah.
You're kind of in it to win it at that point.
Well, and it's not a new concept.
Right, it's not a new concept, and in fact, I don't want to use the term boilerplate, but it's a very common contract layout for these other projects that are similar to it. This is kind of nothing new, so to speak. Some other points in here, they kind of lay out the different periods, the development period, the construction period, completion development. UAMPS is to operate, maintain, and decommission the project. Participants can use capital contributions. In other words, if we had a big bucket of money and we wanted to not bond for any of our portion of our share, we could just pay cash for it and then just make the power payments, but it's probably not going to happen. For example, on the Vail project, we didn't have enough to pay for the whole thing, but we paid for half, so we reduced our bond exposure by half on that project. And then part of the contract says that we'll agree to maintain rates and revenues sufficient to pay the obligations under this contract. And like all of our projects, with the exception of IPP, the payment obligation is not contingent on energy delivery. So there's no guarantee that you got to pay the fixed costs, whether it's broke down or something else going on. But that's, like I say, that's common among.
Once it's up and running.
Yeah, exactly. If somebody defaults in the project, that entitlement share that they owned can be spread pro rata amongst the other remaining participants. And so technically our participant share could go up by up to 25%, but that is still a term to be defined in the contract. Let's see. Participant cannot execute it until it receives governing body approvals, which is what we're doing tonight and in 2 weeks.
Gosh, we have so much power right now.
Yes. Say no.
You do. You could. This remains in effect until the PMC, which stands for Project Management Committee, terminates by a supermajority vote. They can't terminate without ensuring the bonds will be paid, and UAMPS is required to use commercially reasonable efforts to disposition project assets and distribute proceeds to members. So these are all terms in the power
In the
system.
contract, okay.
The Project Management Committee, of which, if we're a member of this project, I sit on that Project Management Committee, provides oversight and decision-making. You have given me full and complete authority, because I'm your representative, to act as a representative to UAMPS under the Joint Action Agency to act on all the matters that come in this committee. UAMPS board acts only on the recommendation of the Project Management Committee. This is kind of not weird, but when I'm sitting on the Project Management Committee, I represent Logan City, but I'm also a member of the board of directors.
Yeah.
And when I act in that office, I'm acting on UAMPS' behalf. But I can't do anything unless the Project Management Committee approves that action as a board member. Joint action agreement and bylaws governing voting rights, and then it's kind of set up just like almost all the other, well, all of the other UAMPS projects. PMC determines whether the project will proceed past predetermined development milestones. Got to have 85% prescription, and they're continuing to solicit subscription. If they can't get it to where it needs to be, they will downsize the project. You lose a little bit of the cost effectiveness if you make it smaller, so we're hoping to keep it larger, but that's a possibility.
But those costs, the 5 million, et cetera, those stay the same?
Yeah.
Okay.
Create off-ramps called determination dates for when the maximum cost of energy will be evaluated. In other words, there's a certain levelized cost of energy that we set as a threshold, and if we can't make that cost, we have an off-ramp to kill the project and pay the debts off where we're at and then move on.
For the whole project or just for Logan City?
It would be the whole project.
Okay.
And that price has not quite yet been determined. This is what Logan City has signed up for, 26.25 megawatts for the peaker, 31.35 megawatts for the base load unit. And these numbers are in the resolution, I believe.
How does
Yes, they are.
how does that compare to what our subscription is, for example, say for the wind farm that's?
I'm sorry?
How does that compare to some of the other subscriptions that we have for like the solar field that's down in?
So we have 7 megawatts over at the Steel Solar across the way. We have
Okay.
5 megawatts at the Red Mesa down in southern Utah. We have 44 megawatts through IPP, but when it downsizes to the gas, we'll have 22 megawatts.
Okay, so it's comparable to
So yeah,
that.
it's kind of in those neighborhoods. This is a graph that UAMPS put together. It's kind of a forecast of what our existing resources are. All the colors underneath are different resources. The red solid line above is what our projected load is over the next 20 years. And then the dotted line above that is our load plus 15% capacity, and that is a whole another can of worms that we aren't going to cover tonight that has to do with extended day ahead markets. That will be another learning experience that, anyways, if we don't have that 150% capacity requirement in the EDAM, then we can be penalized if we don't come to the market with enough capacity. So anyways, you can see this stacked with different things. Member non-dispatchable, probably none of this makes much sense, but we'll go through it a little bit. So this is the same graph, only with these new facilities stacked in there, and you can see that it starts to approach and even exceed what our needs are in some cases, in some hours. Just some assumptions for this forecast. They used 2024 as the base year. They assumed 1.5% annual growth, exponential growth, which is pretty average for what Logan City has seen for the last 20 to 30 years. They're using existing non-dispatchable or renewable generation in the 20s. So like our Red Mesa solar and our Steel solar and even our own solar, those are in this forecast until that particular resource gets retired. Hunter, which is our coal unit up in Price, is assumed to be available for 7 months of the year, and we're doing that currently because we can't get coal delivered, so we conserve coal part of year, and then we run it when we really need it in the summer and the winter. Nebo, which is our natural gas down in Payson, this is kind of just kind of a workhorse generation station for us. They're assuming that it operates perfectly and up to its maximum capacity. And then the bottom bullet, MIGs, which stands for Member Internal Generation. Those are the generators that Logan City owns at SOC, and also the ones we're building. Those are assumed to operate perfectly, and they'll be generating up to their capacity depending on high load or low load hours. And then this bottom piece, the MIGs only run if all of the resources cannot meet the load. In other words, we run them kind of like a peaker. IPP was not credited, which I'm good with, because I like if we can lay those costs off to California and not run that generation. It's a good back pocket resource for us as we grow. Hunter is, according to PacifiCorp, they want to take that thing down in 2032. That's part of that graph, that forecast. Nebo, same thing. It's supposed to be online through 2044. That is also reflected in that graph. Renewable resources, there's a few different ones in here that aren't in effect yet. We're part of this Fremont Solar that is hopeful to come online, but it's not an actual resource yet. So, but that was assumed to be part of this. And then you'll see under other dispatchable resources that are part of this forecast, the two new ones. Also, there's a portion of new nuclear in there because UAMPS is still hopeful to get some nuclear in the forecast, and then to be determined dispatchable, which means some other unknown resources out there that hopefully will fill that need for load. You can see this. Okay, so that's kind of what I wanted to run through, and those are the slides that you saw. We had a member of the Power Board have some considerations and questions. He didn't vote against. The Power Board did vote for this project, but there was one who abstained from voting. He didn't vote no, but he did vote yes. And these are some questions he raised.
Okay.
One, the cost estimate is $93 to $167. Solar and storage in this Lazard study that's referenced is at $60 to $210. He worries that maybe we don't consider that more. I mean, I feel it is because we've got existing solar resources. We're also in steady projects of solar resources coming online, but it's a good question to ask. And then he also asked the question, do we need this even after we construct a 10 megawatt hour plant or a 10 megawatt plant? My answer to that is, as we consider resources for Logan City, we kind of go through this cycle of we're really short on resource, which is kind of where we are now. We're a little bit short to where we got to tackle some bigger generation projects, and that's going to put us maybe a little over, but we will grow into that, and we'll be glad we have that in 10, 15 years. There's not really a way to go up through the middle.
Stay even all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of, yeah, maybe we don't the first 5 years, but I think maybe the next 5 years we will. Some more considerations for the combined cycle plant. Cost estimate is 66 to 94. Geothermal is estimated to be 66 to 94. Why don't we look harder at geothermal? I will say UAMPS has looked at and done RFPs for several geothermals. None of them have panned out. I even had one that I thought was going to go that we were doing outside of UAMPS. In fact, we're doing it jointly with UMPA, which I spoke of earlier, and Lehigh.
So
and
the one that went to California.
They saw bigger money and just have disappeared. I will tell you this, that just recently we signed up for a geothermal through UAMPS, 2 megawatts, which isn't a lot, but it's $100 a megawatt hour. So it's expensive.
It's actually higher.
And maybe
than
in
that
10 years
estimate.
it won't be, but right now it's
So,
to swallow.
in response to the one question about building the plant that we're building and acquiring this additional resource is 5 or more years down the road. Our plant will be operational prior to that.
Next summer. next fall.
So your 5-year, yes, we'll have, you know, we've built this and we're going to use it, but in that time, by the time we get to this other one, we'll probably be in that lean phase again.
I think we'll still be growing into it, I hope, because I would rather be a little bit fat, especially, like I say, this is not the discussion to talk about the extended day ahead market or EDAM, but that's going to throw us into a whole nother situation. But we won't, I'll brief you at another time.
You can do that at 5:30.
Yeah.
What you're saying is we're going to need it.
We may,
Yeah, we're gonna need
it's still a very developing situation. Anyway, some more, he knows geothermal is more problematic, but could these issues be resolved in the next 5 years? Possibly. I'm a little bit conservative. My tendency is to, I know I can get this. I'm not really sure I can get this, so I'm going to go for this for now. And we really do look at natural gas, even though it is a thermal product that, you know, has carbon output. We're just not ready to go to nuclear or all solar and battery. We're just not there yet. And we got to have something to bridge that gap while we continue to grow.
And these have the hydrogen capacity too, so if there's hydrogen, they can switch over.
There's
which I think is
possibility
great.
there.
Yeah.
And then the other question he asked is, do we consider market block purchases? And we continue to do that even now, block purchases instead of this project. I think that we'll end up doing both, to be frank.
Is that just because the market block could be a shorter time period? Like what, or that they're, I mean, I don't know that they'd be less expensive than this, correct? If we
Well,
went
and
with
it
market block?
depends. Usually when you hedge something, whether it's natural gas or energy itself, you're going to pay a little bit more. We've been pretty good at getting a good deal on that sort of thing. And that might be a valid concern. We could rely on market purchases. However, in 2022, that was a bad place to be.
$1,000
We
a
lost a lot.
megawatt, yeah.
Well, we did. Luckily, we had that power cost adjuster in our rate that kept us from losing money. But there were a lot of cities that surround us that didn't have that, and they lost millions in a few months on that. So I guess it just gives budget certainty on our resources as we go forward. And then he brought up lots of concerns about UAMP studying, you know, things like system-wide peak demand reduction programs and demand response programs for thermostats or EV charges. No, frankly, I mean, I sit on the board and I sit in the project management committee meetings, and maybe this should be something that UAMPS considers, but it really, at least from my perspective now, is a little bit outside their wheelhouse. But it certainly could be something that's done. Heavily incentivizing replace at least 10% efficient AC units in each city. I will say that, I think all of you are familiar, Logan City has a rebate program for energy efficient appliances and lighting and things like that. And we administer our own. UAMPS also does one. We do not participate in theirs because we do our own, but it's very similar to what we do. So they do some of that. And he just brings out some good points. If statewide we save 1 kW, 2 kW over 25,000 units, that's 20 to 30 megawatts of reduced power. He's talking a lot about the cheapest energy you can buy is energy you don't use, right? So if you can figure out conservation methods, that's really your best bet.
And that's all consumer driven though, for the most
right.
part.
And maybe I'm wrong, but in my mind, that should be a big part of the mission of the RESAB board, right? Because they consider renewable energy things and education to the public. And anyways, his last bullet point was, I obviously don't think this is a total solution, but it feels like UAMPS doesn't really consider anything but building more. And there may be some truth to that.
But that doesn't prevent us from considering those.
No.
I mean, like if we kept EV chargers that draw 7 kilowatts out of the peak demand window, we can do that.
Yeah, and you're right, and that's
I don't think we have to entirely rely on UAMPS to do all these things that he suggests.
And at some point, we may want to go to a time of day rate. I mean, we're not really set up to do that, but that may be something to consider in the future, but.
we don't have to
the
rely on
software to
UAMPS for that necessarily.
No, and UAMPS, we do really lean on them for actual energy and for scheduling and some regulatory stuff, but truly we haven't leaned on them for conservation.
It's not their mission to.
Well, I'm not sure, that would have to be, and not to say that that's not the right thing to do, to go to UAMPS and say, hey, we've got all these projects. Can we make a project at UAMPS that has to do with conservation?
Well, you're on the board.
Yeah.
Huh?
You're on the
I
board.
know, I only knew a guy on the board of directors.
But I don't know how the way they're structured.
Well, and that's kind of me. I guess I need to be more imaginative, think outside the box a little bit.
Because I just don't see how the way that UAMPS is structured today, that a project on conservation is within their wheelhouse.
Exactly.
Well, it's like selling ice cream and telling people it's not good for you.
Yeah.
Don't eat it. I'm going to sell it to you anyway.
Here's some more.
Yeah.
Made a new flavor.
Got a new flavor. Eat this cookie.
Any other questions? I know I went through that really fast. I hope I disseminated enough information, and then there's enough reading there for you to.
Okay. I would highly encourage all of us here to bring any questions to Mark before our meeting in 2 weeks, because this is a pretty comprehensive coverage, so. if you
Yeah,
have
it's a big one.
questions-
This is a big project for
It's a
sure.
big
Can I ask a couple questions?
Yeah.
Those price per megawatt, how do those compare to what we're paying right now, the projected? Versus like what's our median today?
It's, right now, our blended average wholesale is about $67 a megawatt hour, right in there. So it's I mean, the
50%
peaker's not,
more.
but
We're kinda in the
we've always typically paid a lot more for a peaker power. It's just expensive.
But even the base
the
load
base-
here would be another 20% more, give or take.
Yeah, it could be a little more. My only thought is that our blended average wholesale takes into account Hunter, which is an extremely cheap coal product that is going to go away. The natural gas down in Nebo is probably, I want to say it's in the $45 to $50 range. Our wind product is $80, so it's pretty high. So it kind of swings, and I just think that, we're in a new age. If we're talking about building a new plant, those construction costs are going to be much higher than if we tried to build this 20 years ago. So those costs are going to get reflected in the levelized cost of energy. And I just think that's what you're going to see everywhere. I think power costs will continue to climb. I don't see them reducing.
What do you estimate the construction costs on these facilities to roughly be in the range of?
I don't know what the total cost is. I'd have to do some quick math. I mean, you could say, okay, they're expecting 75% capacity factor at what was it, $63 per megawatt hour, and you divide that out over the 20 years of bonding. So whatever that is, I'm not sure how many
Rich, do the
millions
math.
that is.
So.
42.
It's a bit, one of the slides, they estimated, or no, I think it was in the resolution, they estimated one of the plants at, I believe it was $700 million. So that was one of the plants, and I don't remember what the other one was. And that's in all that paperwork you guys got.
Couple more questions if I can.
Okay.
We all want to go home,
Well,
but
actually,
here I am.
I have to leave because I'm 5 minutes late to an emergency.
If you're okay, if I keep going then.
I got you
Well,
covered.
Mark, it's up to
Mark will be
now,
our chair.
so
Yep,
I will
go for it.
pass. Here you go, Mark.
Thank you.
Can I hold that for a minute? Have a good night, Amy.
Oh, wait, but before I go, just really quickly, we need to let Paul know if we'd like him to have JUB come to do the watershed project at our next meeting in December or in January. So if you guys could talk about
Yeah, we can
that
talk
under
about
other
it.
considerations and let me know if you want that at the next
Mark's
meeting.
writing it down. Have a good Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Oh, that's right.
I lost my train of thought here. You were saying that we need 85% membership to move forward with this project. I'm probably using the wrong terminology.
Yeah, no, yeah.
roughly what is
I believe
Logan's
that-
percent? If they get to 100%, what is Logan's percentage of that? Do you expect it to be?
If they get to 100%, we're at that 36 and 21 and change number.
We're at 36% and 21%?
Yeah, where was that slide?
Oh, was it?
Right
Did I
there.
miss it?
26 and 31, that's
Oh, that's-
100%. So if they get to.
But that'd be roughly our same percentages.
Say they get to 90% of the prescription, right? You've got certain size of engines you've got to put in. You can't just scale them at whatever you want. So we might get bumped up in size to bring that number to 100% if they can't get enough subscriptions to reach the 100%.
And on the same slide, our current like base load usage, I have in my head that's typically around 100 megawatts. Is that correct? Like,
no, that's our peak.
Oh, that's our peak,
base
okay.
load is right in the neighborhood of 60 to 65 megawatts. Like that's what we burn 12 months of the year. And in the summer, we push up above 100, and in the winter, we push up.
so this would be
85.
increasing our base load by 50%.
Well,
but obviously demand's going to go up at that time.
We're going to lose Hunter.
Well, but yeah, we've got these other assets that are going to go away, and we also, some of the base load that we run now are market purchases. So
Sure.
we'll take those market purchases out and replace that with this.
Okay.
My wife's trying to call me. Where are you?
That's why you put it on Do Not Disturb. Does it, I mean, it seems high for a non-renewable increase in our supply. Does that?
Yeah.
I mean, for what we're currently using 5 to 10 years from now, it seems like a lot of fossil fuel production, and it's going to severely skew our fossil fuel to renewable that we discussed just a few weeks ago.
I don't know though, because you've got the plants that are going to go offline.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so you're just replacing like for like.
Bad with bad.
Well, no.
Well, coal is going to natural gas, so that's
yeah, so-
50% better. I mean, it's still.
Yeah, and the coal, you're right.
But it could be hydrogen, so it's not always going to be natural gas.
You're right, it's not, you're right, it's not renewable. But
are we looking at
But
a?
the speakers also allow us to utilize more renewables because.
that's correct.
Again,
Right,
we're
the
having
figure
conversations with USU right now about wanting to add more solar to their portfolio. Well, that also means we have to have the power to back them up. So
Right.
that kind of plays into it as well.
We're looking at a 20-year contract on this?
The bonds will be for 20 years.
The bonds will be for 20 years.
And
But
so essentially, yeah, you're paying that higher cost per power until the bonds are paid off, and then that cost per megawatt hour drops. I expect the life of this plant would be closer to 30, 40 years.
okay.
If natural gas is still a viable fuel source.
Which I guess is the other.
Or hydrogen.
Yeah.
Yeah, or hydrogen.
Or what does
correct.
nuclear do? I mean, if it comes in, I mean, does it become less expensive? Who knows? And
I
I also
mean,
don't know.
everything I see now, I think
Yeah.
nuclear will come in at higher than this, considerably higher, but it certainly has to be part. In fact, you can see on this graph, this little purple stuff up at the top is
Yeah, that's the nuclear.
kind of the new nuclear. So there's a piece of that in there as well.
What is the likelihood that hydrogen would replace natural gas within the lifespan of?
Within a 30.
I think there's a pretty high likelihood. For example, at IPP down in Delta, I mean, they've mined out several huge salt domes, and their intent is to store hydrogen in those salt domes to supplement the natural gas generation at IPP and provide hydrogen. Some of that energy will be from hydrogen. Some will be natural gas, but some will be hydrogen. That's in process. They've spent millions to develop it.
And is hydrogen completely clean? I don't even know technology is.
Nothing's
It can be. It can be.
It can be.
Typically, hydrogen right now is produced a majority by fossil fuels, but the idea is that solar and wind and things like that could be used to produce green hydrogen. But that's not very prevalent yet, but I mean, that's the way the world wants to go.
So go back in your history book, and in 2019, what was our average cost per megawatt in 2019?
It was probably about 45 cents.
I was going to say about 45.
Yeah.
So we're up to
Back when life
65
was
now, so in 5 more years, 85 is not a stretch. The way things
I
are
don't
going.
think so.
Yeah.
And obviously cost is part of it, but truthfully, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around spending, and obviously we're not spending the 700, but being part of putting $700 million into a natural gas plant that will still be functioning when I'm almost 80.
I'll be gone.
And you'll all be gone, you know.
What?
Sorry.
I hope so.
I hope so.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, but, you know, like,
No, I get that. And I guess the only answer.
like, no offense, but like everyone else is, and it just seems like a really long time to
think
invest in
over
natural
time,
gas.
this 30 megawatts is just going to become a smaller and smaller and
Sure.
smaller percentage of what we're using, to the point where it's going to be, you know,
Still a lot.
10% of our.
And we're truly looking at it as a bridging technology to get us to a more carbon-free energy. We just don't have anything in the
Not an
bucket
option.
right now, yeah.
And we have to have something in the bucket.
Sure. And I mean, that was one of my other questions is, we don't do this, hypothetically, what other options do we
We're
have?
exposed to market purchases, wherever that comes from.
Which
And-
is, in your opinion, we
Well,
definitely don't want to do.
It's very volatile, so it's difficult to budget from.
2 years ago, we were paying $1,000 a megawatt.
And
Yeah,
then,
if it was available.
For that week.
But also the,
Yeah,
but also the
there were
pandemic
weeks where it wasn't.
was a little bit of an outlier.
Yeah.
And I understand that we need to.
Yeah, but we don't know
but-
what the outliers coming are.
Sure.
Which could be.
and we don't know what the market blocks, whether,
Sure.
what energy.
What energy they're
Yeah.
coming from, sure.
And I feel
And I'm
like,
not totally opposed to buying and using fossil fuels at this point, but it seems, again, a little crazy to me to spend $700 million or invest $700 million into more of it at
Well,
this
we're
point.
not doing 700.
Well, yeah, and I understand that. Something that you're on the board of
Yeah.
is that.
Yeah?
I think that is the biggest risk that we face,
Is
the environmental obsolescence.
Yeah.
And going out 20 years. But I think the opposite question is equally valid. What else?
What do we have? Yeah.
well, we didn't know.
But you can do market share,
Can
and
do market.
it's more risky, but also we're not.
I don't even, you go back 3 years, that is not an option. Why not even, you go back, how long, Mayor? 18 months? That's not an option. Now it is. 18 months ago?
It was not.
Right.
And this other item I spoke about, this extended day-ahead market, it's going to fundamentally change how we produce our own resource, think of our own resource, and purchase resource for our city. And one of the stipulations of it is, if you don't come to the market with 115% of what you need, you're going to get fined. And we're not going to have a way to get out of that.
And we don't have a choice about going into the market. I mean,
Right, that's gonna be
Rocky Mountain
determined by what
Power,
Pacific Core does,
Pacific
not
Core
what
is
Logan
going
City
into it, and that's how our
So we're gonna get
transmission
drug into
comes,
this
so.
market. Now,
we
that's
have
not to
no
say,
choice about
maybe,
joining that.
well, like I say, that we're getting into the weeds on some stuff that we don't need to talk about tonight.
Yeah, your 5 minutes are up.
Mark, I have more questions.
3 minutes. 3 minutes.
I'm struggling, Mark.
5 minutes are up. You're going to have to go talk to Mark on his own.
Again,
Yeah.
it's security, I mean, do you know what you're getting?
So we didn't know when we invested in the coal power plants that they were going to become obsolete.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't know global warming was.
They were a reliable source of power that we could count on at a certain price point that we were able to afford. And I do believe that our job is to create stability
I don't disagree with you.
and budgetary, not, I don't know what the right word is, but consistency or budgetary,
The city has to be
Yeah.
solvent forever.
and we have to also recognize that, every electric vehicle is adding to the load, and every electric stove is adding to the load, and every large development is adding to the load, and every time we approve a new.
I mean, our base load's just going through the roof.
I just see those numbers going higher in a shorter amount of time than
And
lower.
so.
And I don't disagree with anything that you're saying. I don't like the option I'm being presented with.
If I could bring you a 30 megawatts of geothermal, you'd be good with it?
Yep.
This is rock in a hard place, for
Yeah.
sure.
It is a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
But I think we have to be able to, make sure that we have that resource.
And I agree with you, but do we have to
That's our-
pick that for the next 40 plus years?
We always have to pick it for that long if we're helping to build it.
Yeah.
Right.
We always have to.
Right, if we're helping to build it, are there options?
Our number.
So I'll meet with you outside of 8:30 at night at a council meeting.
Our number one responsibility as city council and leaders is to provide services to our citizens. And if we can't provide those services, then we're failing, even if it's from a source that we don't like.
And I agree with you, but I'll bet there's other sources.
But
This isn't the only option.
There aren't other projects that are currently available to us to participate in
Or in the next 10 years or
that
on the
would fulfill your desires.
And will there be
And then-
another in 2 years?
And that's certainly a decision that the council could make, is that, no, we're not going to do this. We're going to hope that geothermal pops up or nuclear comes to fruition.
But the timeline's going to be like equally as long, if not
Yeah.
longer, on some of these. I mean, some of those projects could end up taking 8 years.
But you have a problem investing in 40 years on geothermal? Not really, right? Like,
yeah, until an earthquake ruins it.
Well, an earthquake would ruin this too. So that's,
We're taking a risk either way. So.
You're right. But
Taking a risk.
saying an earthquake is that could ruin anything.
Possibility.
My wife keeps
Okay,
texting
we
me,
need to
and
be
Mark's
done.
wife keeps texting him. So, Mark, can I schedule a meeting with you?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Can you put up with me for another few more minutes sometime?
2.5 hours.
I'll buy lunch.
He says that all the
Excellent
time.
questions, Mike. I think we all have the same concerns.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
they're valid questions.
Yeah, they're very valid
Completely.
questions.
They are
yeah.
valid questions.
And again, do you take a gamble that something else will come up that's better in time?
I mean, we tried the gamble of nuclear
Yeah.
with the
tried.
small reactor, and we made the choice that it was not one we were willing to continue to invest in, and we took an off-ramp, which is why there are the off-ramps.
But this one doesn't have very many off-ramps.
It doesn't have as many.
It's pretty,
From what he said at the beginning,
yeah,
it's
this
not
is pretty
really any.
standard for existing projects that come about.
I mean, the nuclear one had off-ramps because, for crying out loud, it was
It was
brand-new technology.
Pretty risky.
It was very
It
risky.
was an attempt to mitigate risk.
It was very risky. Mark, thank you for your presentation and for a thought-provoking
And Mark.
information. So, all right. Okay. Rich, you're up next.
Oh,
You have 60 seconds.
super simple item.
I have something to do, so.
Just turning up the budget to make sure our budget matches what's available from HUD. I'm not exactly sure what caused this variance. I believe it was something that was allocated for administration that is now being allocated for the projects.
Okay.
Awesome.
Reallocate. Awesome.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Rich?
Nope.
All right.
Thanks, Rich.
Under our other,
I won't ask you for any
under our
questions.
other considerations, we have the watershed project. Do we want to try and schedule that this year or next?
So my question is, what is the purpose for us to have them do it over again?
Again, they just did it last
Monday.
night.
Yeah, I think it's
Because only 3 of
similar,
us were here.
but yeah.
I'm familiar with everything they
It
presented.
just gives the public another opportunity, gives council another opportunity to hear it, but maybe there's no need.
Well, what I don't know is, it was an informational update on where they are in the project. Is that valuable for us to do it again? Or is it, because they're going to submit the EIS this next month, and then it will just be a waiting game until they hear back from.
Who all was there last night?
The 3 of us besides you.
Yeah.
And not Amy.
Yeah.
So really, I feel like if Amy wants to have it, I'm happy to go through it again, or if anyone else does.
And I have been informed enough, that I got the same information that you got last night, so.
And did they record that meeting?
Yes.
I think so,
Yeah,
yeah.
so Amy and
Yeah,
I
so
should go
it's-
back and watch
Go
the
back and watch
recording.
it.
And it was very informational, but I don't know whether,
I don't feel the need to do it again.
Yeah.
yeah,
Unless you want Paul to address what the city's involvement might be, assuming it goes forward. But
Yeah, I don't.
we're good.
But
Yep.
Nobody's
If
going to ask
Amy
for
really
another
wants
longer meeting.
No, exactly.
if
I mean, I
Amy
still-
really wants one, if we can do it, I don't
Yeah.
care, but it's, I liked the format last night because it was not as, there was an opportunity for people to send in questions ahead of time,
Yeah.
and there was an opportunity for people to write questions while they were there.
And it was recorded.
And it sounded like they answered most of
Almost
those
all.
questions.
They
Yeah.
did answer most of those questions, and then you had a little bit of, there's always a little bit of,
Excitement.
yeah, that's a good word for it.
Too much of that in my life.
Okay.
So,
I'm fine if we do not have another presentation. Anything else?
nope.
I have two small things before you
Fire up.
let us go. If anyone's interested, the whole public's left now at this point, but Public Works is presenting to BPAC tomorrow on 500 North and a little bit on Pasta Canyon Road. If anyone is interested in coming and seeing what they've put together in terms of protected bike lanes on 500 North. I know I've talked about it a few times, but this will be like their first public presentation of it.
And we
To the
will be,
BPAC.
sorry, and we'll be sending out the invitations for the December 5th
That was the other
meeting
thing.
on the first dam tank project.
Do you know where it's going to be held?
It's on the
I
flyer.
think this
here.
council chambers, I
Yeah,
should
it's
look.
here. It's on the flyer, but they emailed that out to everyone.
That's
today.
City Hall.
Yeah, City Hall, 5:30 on December 5th.
No, but I meant, is it here or there?
I think it's in here.
Okay.
Isn't that what it says on there?
Bigger in here.
Or am I just mixing up my meetings now?
What?
You're too young for that.
Get more people in here.
No, this is
That's what I don't
the Canyon Road water tank project.
Logan City Conference Hall room. Other room.
Okay.
I am mixing up my meetings. I'm not too young for it.
We can move it if we need.
But 5:30 on December 5th. If you're interested in that,
Okay.
to
No, I
our
actually thought
large
the
audience
this room
here at
and an
8:30.
overflow would be there, but
Yeah.
we'll figure it out.
What I don't, the only
It's fine
thing,
if they come in.
we have to have it so that we're not here.
No. This is JUB's meeting.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
JUB.
it's being noticed as a public meeting because all of you
We're gonna
council
be here.
members,
We'll
most
have-
of you
we'll have
will be there.
JUB up here.
But it is JUB's meeting and they are giving a presentation.
That's the way they did it last time.
Yeah, it'll be very similar to the format they used, is my understanding. You can join the webinar, but it's,
Yeah.
Okay. As long as we're not,
No.
And I think, I don't know if we've,
we're in the audience.
I'm going to sit right back there where Josh usually is. So.
I'm gonna watch from
the cushy seat.
Show us a new seat, huh?
Already picked it out. I can see it right there.
Okay, I have one final consideration.
Yes.
Have a good Thanksgiving, guys.
Yes, everyone. And don't forget about the
You as
holiday,
well, Mike.
holiday celebration on
Just
Center
happy.
Street on November 30th. November 30th, holiday celebration. Be there.
To our
We are
last
adjourned.
meeting.